Hey, if you're new to my channel, then consider liking and subscribing. It would really mean a lot to me, and honestly, it'd make my day. If you already did, thank you so much. Oh, and by the way, if you like listening to fan fiction, check out my other channel. The link's in the description.
The New Dawn of Monkey D. Luffy by Zero King Ages. Just 2 days before the start of his epic adventure, Monkey D. Luffy finds himself in an unexpected battle against a foreign soul trying to take over his body. With his unwavering spirit, Luffy fights back and manages to repel the entity, but not without consequence. In the process, he gains fragmented memories of a potential future.
The dawn broke over the Going Merry, casting a warm glow on the ship as Luffy's voice shattered the morning calm. Sanji. Food. I'm hungry. In the kitchen, Sanji, the new cook, was already busy, cigarette lit, examining the supplies. It was his first morning as the crew's official cook, and he wanted to set the right tone. The kitchen door burst open as Luffy rocketed in, followed by a yawning Usopp. Meat. I want lots of meat. Luffy drooled, trying to peek into the pot Sanji was preparing. Back off, rubber brain. Sanji blocked the fridge with his leg. First rule on this ship, nobody touches my kitchen without permission. But I'm the captain. Luffy pouted. And I'm the cook. That means I'm in charge of food and keeping you all alive at sea. Johnny and Yosaku, who had been sleeping on the deck, were awakened by the commotion. They exchanged amused glances, still getting used to the lively atmosphere aboard the Going Merry. Looks like every morning's going to be an adventure, Johnny chuckled, stretching his arms. Yeah, but it's a good chance to learn, Yosaku replied, watching the crew with admiration. Nami entered, maps tucked under her arm, dark circles visible under her eyes. Sanji immediately twirled. Nami Swan, please, sit, I'll prepare a special breakfast just for you. Thanks, Sanji-kun. She managed a small smile, spreading her maps on the table. We should reach Arlong Park in a week if the wind holds. Something in her voice made Sanji pause, but before he could ask, Zoro stumbled in, still half asleep. Perfect timing, Marimo. Help keep our captain away from the food while I cook. What did you call me, curly brow? Zoro growled. As the two glared at each other, Luffy seized his chance, rubber arms stretching toward the cooking pot. Oh no you won't. Sanji's leg shot out, catching Luffy's hands. Breakfast will be ready when it's ready. Johnny and Yosaku watched the scene unfold, feeling a sense of belonging amidst the chaos. They were eager to prove themselves and learn from the Straw Hat crew, knowing that every day would bring new challenges and lessons. As they settled down for breakfast, Nami's gaze lingered on Zoro's bandaged chest. We need to find a doctor, she said, her voice serious. We can't afford to have anyone else get hurt like Zoro did. Sanji nodded while serving everyone their portions, keeping a watchful eye on Luffy's wandering hands. A doctor would be a valuable addition to the crew. Oi Luffy. Stop stealing from others' plates. Smack. Luffy retracted his rubber arm from Usopp's plate, nursing the new bump on his head from Sanji's kick. But I'm still hungry, he whined, even as he attempted to snatch a piece of meat from Zoro's plate. Smack smack smack. Luffy. Stop stealing everyone's food, Sanji yelled, his leg still raised from his latest kick. But Sanji, Luffy whined, rubbing multiple bumps on his head. I need more meat to become the Pirate King. Your logic makes no sense, the crew shouted in unison. Johnny and Yosaku continued their training, now having to dodge both their captain's rubber arms and protect their food at the same time. Big bro Luffy, please, Johnny pleaded as he barely saved his last piece of bacon. She, Luffy laughed, already eyeing Nami's plate while she was distracted talking about the doctor's situation. Don't even think about it, Nami warned without even looking at him, her fork stabbing the table exactly where Luffy's sneaking hand was about to land. After breakfast, Luffy and Usopp took dish duty. Though, duty might have been a generous term, as Luffy spent more time licking plates clean than actually washing them. That's not how you wash dishes, Usopp scolded, snatching a plate away from Luffy's tongue. While sitting down leaving the dish to Usopp, Luffy's tone suddenly turned serious. Okay, Sanji, Johnny, and Yosaku. There's something you need to know about our next destination. We are going to beat Arlong. Arlong? Who's that? Sanji asked, confusion evident on his face as he lit a cigarette. Johnny and Yosaku's faces went pale. Are you serious, as in Arlong the Fishman, big bro Luffy? Johnny exclaimed. Fishman? Sanji exclaimed in surprise. So I heard on the Grand Line, before he was interrupted by Yosaku. That monster has a bounty of 20 million berries. He rules over 20 towns since coming to the East Blue, Yosaku added, trembling. He's the most dangerous pirate in East Blue, who used to rampage throughout the Grand Line. Why would you want to fight someone like that? They asked in unison. Luffy suddenly stood up, slamming his hands on the table. He made my navigator cry. He screamed, his voice filled with rage. The outburst left everyone momentarily stunned. Nami watched them all, her hands clutching the fabric of her skirt. After years of carrying this burden alone, she decided they deserved to know everything. You should know what you're getting into, she started, her voice trembling. He killed my mother, and then forced me to work for him, drawing maps. That bastard. Sanji slammed his fist on the table while screaming. Nami. Usopp had gone pale, all pretense of bravado gone. Big sis. Johnny and Yosaku were wiping tears from their eyes. Big sis Nami, Johnny and Yosaku exchanged determined looks before raising their swords. Yash. Let's go beat his ass. Usopp, trying to mask his nervousness with bravado, puffed out his chest. Well, this reminds me of the time the great Captain Usopp, single-handedly defeated 1,000 fishmen with just a rubber band and… Shut up, long nose, Zoro interrupted, though an amused smile played on his lips. Save your stories for after we win. Luffy stood up again, his straw hat shadowing his eyes. Nami, his voice was unusually serious. You're my navigator, and nobody hurts my crew. Luffy. Nami whispered, tears forming in her eyes. For the first time in 8 years, she felt like she wasn't alone anymore. We're going to Arlong Park, Luffy declared, cracking his knuckles, and I'm gonna kick his ass. Count me in, Zoro grinned, placing a hand on his sword. For Nami-san, I'll turn that fish into sushi, Sanji declared. The great Captain Usopp will. Usopp's knees were shaking, but he stood firm, we'll fight too. Looking at them all, her nakama, Nami felt hope blooming in her chest. Real hope, for the first time in years. Thank you, she whispered, wiping her eyes, all of you. She, Luffy grinned, adjusting his straw hat. That's what nakama are for. Does this mean we can have a feast when we beat him? Luffy asked hopefully, somehow already munching on food he'd managed to squirrel away. Where did you even get that? Everyone yelled in exasperation. Sanji's eye twitched as he recognized the meat from the dinner he'd just prepared. I just put that in storage, you rubber menace. But Sanji, Luffy whined through a mouthful of food. Thinking about kicking fish guy's butt made me hungry. Everything makes you hungry, Usopp pointed out. Nami couldn't help but laugh, the tension from earlier melting away. Even in serious moments like this, Luffy was still, Luffy. Fine, Sanji sighed, lighting another cigarette. After we defeat Arlong, I'll prepare the biggest feast you've ever seen, Nami Swan. Meat. Luffy cheered, throwing his hands up and accidentally revealing more stolen food hidden in his shirt. That's where the rest of it went, Sanji roared, launching himself at his captain while everyone else burst into laughter. As the morning settled, Luffy gathered everyone on deck. Alright, everyone, let's get to our hockey training. Johnny and Yosaku exchanged curious glances. Hockey training? Johnny asked, intrigued. Zoro, already familiar with the concept, nodded. Yeah, it's a power that lets you sense others, strengthen your attacks and even hit logia users. And even knock out your opponents. It's crucial for surviving in the Grand Line. Nami, leaning against the railing, added, it's useful, but not everyo. Usopp and I focus more on our own skills. Usopp nodded in agreement, fiddling with his slingshot. Yeah, I prefer to keep my distance and use my brains. Luffy grinned but shook his head at Nami's statement. You're right, Nami, that not everyone needs to master it, but if you want to survive in the Grand Line, you need the basics at least. Johnny, curious about Zoro's motivation, asked, Zoro Iniki, what made you interested in learning this? Zoro's expression turned serious as he looked at Wado Ichimonji. I make a promise to become the world's greatest swordsman. My fight with Mihawk showed me just how far I must go. If I want to become the world's strongest swordsman, I need every advantage I can get. Raw strength isn't enough anymore." The crew fell silent, remembering the overwhelming gap in power they'd witnessed during that battle. Suddenly, Nami's voice cut through the silence. "Everyone, get ready, there's a storm approaching from the east." "How can you tell, big sis Nami?" Johnny asked, amazed. "Experience," she replied simply, though her expression softened slightly. As the crew scrambled to their positions, Luffy watched with pride. Even if they weren't consciously using haki yet, each of them was already growing stronger in their way. "That's why we train," Luffy said firmly as they worked together to handle the storm. "To get stronger, to protect our dreams, and to face whatever the Grand Line throws at us." The storm hit with full force, but the Straw Hat crew handled it with practiced efficiency. As they navigated through the turbulent waters, Luffy couldn't help but smile. This was just the beginning of their journey to become stronger, and he knew that each challenge would only help them grow. After the storm passed, the crew returned to their training with renewed determination. Usopp had set up targets along the railing, practicing with his slingshot. "Maybe if I can sense where enemies are, my shots will be even more accurate." However, his attempts at meditation were frequently interrupted by his own nervous imagination. "Focus, Usopp," Zoro called out while continuing his sword forms. "You can't develop haki if you're jumping at every wave." Nami worked on her maps but occasionally joined in the basic exercises. "I still think my weather sense is more practical for now," she said, though she didn't completely dismiss the training. As the afternoon wore on, Luffy noticed something interesting. During a sparring session, Zoro instinctively dodged one of Sanji's kicks without looking. "Did you see that, Zoro?" Luffy exclaimed excitedly. "That was definitely—" Before Luffy could continue, a delicious aroma wafted across the deck. Luffy's nose twitched, and his training focus instantly evaporated. "Food." Luffy's neck stretched toward the kitchen, where Sanji was emerging with several plates. "Oi, oi, wait until I set everything down, rubber brain," Sanji called out, expertly dodging Luffy's grabbing hands. As they ate, Luffy was stuffing his face with meat when Sanji spoke up. "Oi, Luffy, what do you know about these fishmen we're gonna fight?" "Oh." Luffy swallowed a huge chunk of meat. "They're really strong in water. And super proud too. They keep saying humans are weak and stuff. It's annoying, shi. Anyone we should watch out for?" Zoro asked. "Yeah? There's this octopus guy with 6 swords. But Zoro, you're way cooler." Luffy grinned. "Bits of food flying. Then there's this karate fish who goes, hiya, and a long-mouthed guy who spits water." "What about Arlong?" Johnny asked, shaking a bit. "He's super strong," Luffy said while grabbing more meat. "Can break stuff easy and shoots water like BWOSH. But he's dumb cause he thinks humans are weak. That's why we'll kick his ass." Nami sat quietly, gripping her cup. "Don't worry, Nami." Luffy gave her his signature grin. "We're all gonna fight together." Usopp tried suggesting something about nets, and Sanji, Johnny, and Yosaku started talking about strategy, but Luffy and Zoro weren't listening anymore. Shi. You guys think too much," Luffy laughed with his mouth full. "The plan is super simple." Everyone leaned in. "I'm gonna punch Arlong in the face. Hard," Luffy declared proudly. "That's not a plan," they all yelled. "Sure, it is. Zoro fights octopus cuz they both use swords. Sanji kicks karate fish cuz they both fight with legs. Usopp shoots a long-mouthed guy cuz they both go pew-pew." Sanji sighed, lighting his cigarette. "That somehow makes sense." "Oh yeah." Luffy suddenly remembered, looking serious. "We destroy the map room first. That's important." Nami's fork clattered against her plate. Her eyes widened as she stared at Luffy, face pale. That room was her prison for 8 years, where she'd drawn countless maps for Arlong. How could Luffy possibly know about it? She hadn't told anyone about that room, not even her sister. "Luffy," she started, voice slightly shaking, "how did you—" But Luffy was already stuffing another piece of meat in his mouth, deliberately avoiding her questioning gaze. "Because that room makes Nami sad," he said simply as if that explained everything. The others exchanged confused looks, but Nami felt tears pricking at her eyes. Somehow, this rubber idiot always knew exactly what mattered most. "And then what?" Usopp asked nervously. "Then we have a huge feast." Luffy shouted excitedly. With lots of meat. Of course. Everyone shouted back. Nami couldn't help laughing at his simplicity. Oh yeah, Luffy added, picking his nose. Don't fight in the water. It's super annoying. He remembered something about a fish guy with too many teeth, but meat was more important right now. As the days passed, the crew settled into a rhythm of preparation. Zoro spent countless hours meditating with his sword, Wado Ichimonji, occasionally achieving fleeting moments where he could feel something deeper in his cuts. Usopp worked tirelessly on new ammunition types, muttering about anti-fishman pellets, while his hands moved with practiced precision. Sanji divided his time between cooking and practicing his kicks above deck, determined to make his legs strong enough to crack even fishman scales. Johnny and Yosaku, though still nervous, drilled their sword techniques with renewed determination. Nami often stood at the helm, her eyes distant but resolute. Sometimes, late at night, Luffy would catch her studying her maps with trembling hands, but her spine was straight and her jaw set with determination. We're getting closer, Nami announced one evening, her voice steady despite the tension in her shoulders. Another day, maybe two. She, Luffy grinned from his special seat on Mary's head. Perfect, I'm getting hungry for fish. The crew groaned at his joke, but there was comfort in their captain's unwavering confidence. As the stars emerged above them, the Going Merry continued her journey toward Arlong Park, carrying not just a crew, but a family bound by dreams, determination, and the promise of freedom. As they sailed through calm waters, a massive shadow appeared beneath the waves. The sea cow, Momoo, emerged with a plaintive moan, its eyes immediately fixing on the smell of Sanji's cooking. That's Momoo, Nami exclaimed, gripping her staff. It's Arlong's pet sea monster. Luffy tilted his head, studying the creature with unusual intensity. Something about it tickled his memory, but he couldn't quite place it. The sea cow's eyes met his, and for a moment, there seemed to be a flicker of recognition. Oi, Sanji lit a cigarette, stepping protectively in front of Nami. Whatever this thing is, it's not getting near my kitchen. Momoo made another sound, this one distinctly more food-focused as it eyed the meat Luffy was holding. Oh, you want this? Luffy asked, holding up the meat. Then, without warning, his expression hardened. Gum pistol. The punch connected squarely with Momu's snout, sending the sea monster reeling backward unconscious. Luffy! Nami shouted, what was that for? Dunno, Luffy shrugged, just felt right. As Momoo sank beneath the waves, the horizon began to change. The misty outline of buildings emerged through the sea spray, and Usopp's voice cut through the tension. Land ho! His usually boisterous tone carried a tremor of anxiety. I can see Arlong Park. Everyone immediately tensed for battle, but Nami quickly intervened, her navigator's instincts kicking in. Are you all complete idiots? She demanded, smacking the nearest crew member, unfortunately Usopp, on the head. Fighting fishmen at sea is suicide. Even you, Luffy, you're supposed to know better. But Nami. Luffy whined, still chewing. No buts, we need a proper strategy. These waters are their territory. The crew reluctantly agreed, and Nami began outlining their approach to Arlong Park, determined not to let their enthusiasm sink them before the real battle began. Luffy, with a mysterious glint in his eyes, replied, Don't worry, Nami. I have a feeling everything will work out. We just need to stick together. Nami raised an eyebrow, confused by his confidence. What do you mean, Luffy? Do you know something we don't? Luffy grinned, his usual carefree demeanor mixed with an unusual certainty. Let's just say I've got a good feeling about this. Trust me. Nami sighed, exasperated but somewhat reassured. I'm foolish to expect anything smart from you. After taking a moment to gather herself, she began barking orders. Everyone, clean the deck to make it look like there's one person on board. The rest of you, go inside the ship and hide until I tell you to come out. Understand? Everyone else, frightened, replied, Yes. Johnny's hand trembled slightly as he gripped his sword. Beside him, Yosaku's face had gone pale, but his jaw was set with determination. They'd seen what the fishmen could do and had witnessed their brutality firsthand. Yet here they stood, ready to fight. Because sometimes, friendship demands courage. Zoro noticed their nervousness and smirked. Oi, you two, he whispered, try not to shake so much. You'll give away our position." His casual tone helped ease their tension, reminding them they weren't alone in this fight. Sanji lit a cigarette, nodding. "Just make sure you don't snore, Marimo. We don't want to give ourselves away." Usopp, already halfway to hiding, whispered loudly, "I'm great at hiding. I once hid from a giant sea king for 3 days straight." Johnny and Yosaku exchanged nervous glances but nodded, determined to follow Nami's lead. "Big sis Nami, we'll do whatever it takes." As the crew hid, Nami took the helm, steering the Going Merry toward a port where 2 fishmen acting as guards. Her heart pounded with a mix of fear and determination, but she knew she wasn't alone anymore. Her nakama were with her, ready to fight for her freedom and their shared dreams. Luffy crouched behind a barrel, and whispered to Zoro, "Hey, Zoro, Arlong might be strong, but that just makes it more fun to beat him." Zoro smirked, his fingers lightly tapping the hilt of his sword. "Doesn't matter how tough he is. We'll slice him up together." Sanji, catching the conversation, flicked his cigarette with a confident grin. "And I'll make sure to send that fishy freak flying for Nami-san." Nami, overhearing their banter, felt a surge of warmth and determination. She glanced back at her crew, a small but fierce smile on her lips. "Thanks, guys," she whispered, her resolve burning brighter than ever. Luffy, with his future knowledge, felt a sense of calm. He knew the challenges ahead, but he also knew the strength of his crew and the bonds they shared. Whatever the future held, they would face it together. As they approached Arlong Park, Luffy's mind wandered to the future he knew. He saw flashes of battles, new friends, and adventures that awaited them beyond this island. He knew that defeating Arlong was just the beginning of their journey, and he was ready to face whatever came next. Luffy stood silently, adjusting his straw hat. The shadow it cast couldn't hide his grin, but there was steel in his eyes. His crew recognized that look. Without a word, they understood. This wasn't just another fight. This was war. The Mary's hull scraped gently against the dock as Nami guided her in. Her hands moved automatically, securing the mooring lines with practiced efficiency. The usual fishman guards were nowhere to be seen, a detail that made her stomach twist with unease. She could feel her crew's presence behind her on the ship. No words were exchanged. They understood what needed to be done. The sound of their feet hitting the dock one by one echoed in the unusual silence of the port. The familiar path to Arlong Park stretched before them. How many times had she walked this road? Hundreds? Thousands? Each time carrying money? Each time alone? Each time dying a little inside? But not today. Movement caught her eye, a small figure darting between buildings, metal glinting in the sunlight. Nami stopped, her eyes fixed on the boy clutching a kitchen knife with trembling hands. She recognized that look, the same desperate determination she'd worn 8 years ago. The boy's eyes widened, tears threatening to spill. Blood trickled from his lips as he bit down hard, fighting not to cry over his father's death. They took everything he had. And when he couldn't pay anymore, his knuckles went white around the knife's handle. "Your father," she said softly, remembering the suit of upturned houses she'd seen when passing through the southern port. "He was the fisherman from the southern port, wasn't he?" Nami felt something shift inside her. For years, she'd stopped these attempts, telling herself she was protecting them, but now. "We're not surviving," she whispered, the realization hitting her like a physical blow. "We're just existing, living like pets, feeding his greed." From the corner of her eye, she spotted one of the villagers, Old Man Genzo's friend, watching the exchange intently before hurrying away toward the village. The news would spread quickly now. Nami resumed her walk, each step feeling heavier than the last. Behind her, she could sense her crew's presence, their footsteps deliberately quiet, but there. She didn't dare look back, knowing Arlong's men could be watching, but their presence gave her strength she'd never known before. Luffy's sandals made that distinct slapping sound against the dirt road. Zoro's swords clinked softly with each step. She could practically feel Sanji's protective aura and Usopp's nervous energy radiating forward. This time, she thought, her hand unconsciously touching the tattoo on her shoulder, "I'm not walking alone." The towering gates of Arlong Park loomed ahead, casting long shadows in the afternoon sun after 8 years of walking this path, and for the first time, Nami felt something different stirring in her chest. It wasn't fear, it was hope, earlier at the village. Genzo burst into the village square, his face flushed from running. Nami's back, and she's not alone. The villagers gathered quickly, whispers spreading like wildfire. Najiko pushed through the crowd, her eyes wide. What do you mean, not alone? There are others with her, pirates, by the look of them. They're heading to Arlong Park. The crowd erupted in worried murmurs. They all remembered what happened the last time outsiders tried to help, the bloodshed, the losses. We can't let her throw away everything she's worked for, someone shouted. 8 years of sacrifice. Another added. Najiko's fists clenched. Then we stop them before they reach Arlong Park. The villagers grabbed whatever weapons they could find, pitchforks, old swords, farming tools. They rushed toward Arlong Park, taking shortcuts through the tangerine groves. At Arlong Park's entrance, the villagers formed a human barrier, blocking the path to the gate. Genzo stood at the front, arms spread wide. Turn back, he shouted at Nami and her crew. We won't let you throw away 8 years of work. Nami stared at the villagers in shock, her voice trembling. How do you know about the deal? Najiko stepped forward, her eyes filled with tears. I told them, Nami. Everything. About the money, about saving the village. But why? Nami's hands shook. No one was supposed to know. Genzo's voice was gentle but firm. We've watched you suffer for 8 years, Nami. Stealing, risking your life, bearing that mark. He pointed to her tattoo. We couldn't stay silent anymore. You've done enough, another villager called out, more than enough. Leave the island, Nami, someone else shouted. Go live your dream. Be free on the seas. Tears started streaming down Nami's face as more villagers joined in. You deserve to be happy. We won't let you sacrifice any more, these pirates. They seem different, go with them. Nami turned to look at her crew, at Luffy, who was already in his fighting stance, at Zoro gripping his sword, at Sanji lighting a cigarette, and at Usopp trying to look brave despite his shaking knees. But the village? She started. We'll handle it, Genzo declared. We're not weak, we. He was cut off by Luffy's annoyed grunt. This is taking too long. He pulled back his fist, aiming at the gate. Wait, Luffy, Nami began, but it was too late, wham. The fishman guard who had chosen that exact moment to open the gate took the full force of Luffy's punch. He flew backward like a rocket, crashing through multiple walls before splashing into the far pool. The villagers' jaws dropped collectively. They had never seen anyone handle a fishman so easily. From inside Arlong Park came an enraged roar. What is the meaning of this? Zoro shifted his stance, wincing slightly as his partially healed wound from Mihawk pulled at his chest. The bandages were still visible under his shirt, but he could move much better than a week ago. Usopp reached into his new bag, filled with special ammunition he'd prepared during their journey. I've got some new tricks for these fish faces, he muttered, trying to sound braver than he felt. Johnny and Yosaku positioned themselves near the villagers, swords ready. We'll protect the civilians, big bro Zoro. Arlong's crew began emerging from the building, but Luffy's attention remained fixed on their leader. His arm began to steam slightly, a sign of his developing control over his newfound abilities. Before fully engaging in combat, Luffy turned to Nami. His expression softened for a moment as he reached for his straw hat. His treasure. Nami, he said, removing his hat. The action drew everyone's attention, especially the villagers who knew the significance of what they were witnessing. Hold on to this for me. Nami's eyes widened, tears threatening to spill. She knew what this hat meant to him, and had heard the story of his promise to Shanks. But Luffy, that's you're my navigator, he said simply, placing the hat on her head. I don't want it getting damaged while I kick this guy's ass. The gesture wasn't lost on anyone present. Najiko smiled, understanding the deep meaning behind it. Genzo watched intently, remembering all the times he'd seen Nami cry under Arlong's rule. That hat. One villager whispered to another. I've never seen her accept anything from anyone before. Arlong's laugh cut through the moment. How touching, but no matter what promises you make, she'll always be. Gear second, Luffy cut him off, steam rising from his body once again. His eyes locked onto Arlong with fierce determination. She's not your property, she's my nakama. Nami clutched the rim of the straw hat, feeling its worn texture beneath her fingers. For the first time in 8 years, she truly believed everything would be okay. What kind of power is that? Genzo stammered. Impossible. One of Arlong's crew members shouted, his skin's turning pink. Nijiko grabbed her sister's arm. Nami, these friends of yours. They're different from other pirates. Arlong's grin faltered slightly at the sight of Luffy's transformation. Interesting trick, human. But, before he could finish, Luffy vanished from sight. The next instant, one of Arlong's lieutenants went flying through a wall, Struche. The villagers erupted in amazed chatter. Did you see that speed? He just disappeared, not even fishmen can move that fast. Get them! One of Arlong's officers shouted, and dozens of fishmen charged forward. Zoro eyed the fishmen approaching him, his single sword ready. His gaze caught the glint of steel. 2 of his opponents carried katanas. Perfect, he muttered, a predatory grin spreading across his face. You guys are carrying exactly what I need. 2 fishmen swordsmen charged at him, confident in their superior numbers. A wounded human with 1 sword? This'll be easy? Zoro's expression darkened. 1 sword style. Lion song. The strike was so fast it seemed like he hadn't moved at all. 1 fishman fell, his sword spinning through the air. Zoro caught it effortlessly. That's 1. The second swordsman hesitated, taking a step back. What are you? Rorinoa Zoro, he answered, now wielding 2 blades, and I'll be taking that sword too. The fishman attacked in desperation, but Zoro parried with his first blade and disarmed him with the second. The third sword joined his arsenal. Now properly armed, Zoro settled into his familiar stance, all 3 swords in position. 1 in each hand and 1 in his mouth. Despite the pain in his chest, he felt more like himself. Now then, he growled around the sword's hilt, let me show you why they call me the pirate hunter. The remaining fishmen backed away, suddenly realizing they were facing the real demon of the East Blue. Zoro, despite his injury, moved with deadly precision. Onigiri, 3 fishmen fell before they could even raise their weapons. He grimaced but maintained his stance. Don't underestimate human swordsmen. Usopp took a position on higher ground. Special attack. Exploding star. The projectile burst among a group of fishmen, creating a smokescreen. I've got more where that came from. The brave warrior of the sea is here. Sanji lit a cigarette, casually walking toward another group. Oi, fish faces. Anyone who's ever hurt Nami-san. His leg ignited with fury. Collier shoot. 2 fishmen went flying, crashing into their companions. The display of strength from the Straw Hats had an immediate effect on the villagers. Genzo was the first to step forward, gripping his old sword. For 8 years we've lived in fear, he shouted, no more. Johnny and Yosaku raised their swords. If Big Bro Zoro can fight with those injuries, so can we. The villagers, inspired by the courage before them, grabbed whatever weapons they could find. What had started as a pirate battle transformed into a revolution. The people of Kokoyashi village finally fighting back against their oppressors. Nami watched, clutching Luffy's hat, as her hometown united with her new family to fight for their freedom. Arlong sneered down at Luffy from his position. Watching your crew fight. You're different from the other humans I've crushed. You're right, Luffy replied coldly, his hat shadowing his eyes. I'm the one who's going to take you down. Meanwhile, the lieutenant battles erupted. Karubi launched at Sanji with devastating speed. 100 brick fist. The attack narrowly missed as Sanji flipped backward. Not bad, Sanji smirked, launching into a spin. But my kicks are stronger, Collier strike. Hatchin whirled his 6 swords in complex patterns. Takahashi black. The octopus fishman became a tornado of blades. Zoro met the assault head-on, his 3 swords singing. Demon slash, steel clashed against steel, neither swordsman giving ground. Chu fired rapid water bullets at Usopp, who dove behind the debris. Stop running, long nose. Who's running? Special attack. Tabasco star. Usopp countered, scoring a direct hit in Chu's eyes. Above the chaos, Arlong's grin widened. Your crew fights well. For humans. But they'll learn why fishmen are the superior species. Luffy cracked his knuckles. The only thing they'll learn is what happens when you make my navigator cry. The intensity of the battles increased, each fighter knowing they were fighting for more than just victory, they were fighting for Nami's freedom. Karubi and Sanji's fight moved to the water, where the fishman thought he had the advantage. In water, humans are helpless. But Sanji surprised him by kicking powerfully underwater. Who said I'm helpless? His kicks, though slowed by water resistance, still packed tremendous force. Hachin's six-sword dance pushed Zoro to his limits, his wounds from Mihawk threatening to reopen. Nayu, you're already injured. These wounds? Zoro grinned through his sword. They're nothing compared to what she endured for 8 years. His determination fueled a powerful counterattack. Usopp, despite his fear, showed surprising cunning. Lead Star, Smoke Star, Egg Star. Stop with these tricks. Chu raged, pursuing him. Who said they were just tricks? Usopp revealed he'd led Chu into a prepared trap. Meanwhile, Nami had returned to Arlong Park, clutching her staff. Tears streamed down her face, but these were different, tears of hope, not despair. I won't let you control anyone else, she shouted, her voice strong and clear. She began fighting the remaining fishmen crew members, each strike of her staff releasing 8 years of pent-up anger. Arlong's eyes narrowed at seeing his navigator fighting back. You ungrateful. She was never yours. Luffy cut him off, his voice deadly serious. Nami is my navigator. The battles continued, each Straw Hat fighting not just for victory, but for Nami's dream of freedom. The air crackled with determination as years of oppression began crumbling under their combined assault. Sanji burst from the water, his leg blazing. You thought the sea was your advantage, Concassor? His axe kick struck Karubi with such force it cracked the concrete beneath them as the fishman crashed down. Zoro, bleeding but unbowed, faced Hachin. 3-sword style. Dragon Twister. The tornado of blades overwhelmed Hachin's 6-sword defense, sending him flying. Usopp's calculated trap sprung perfectly. Special attack. Firebird Star. The explosive projectile caught Chu off guard, ending their chase with a decisive blast. Nami stood triumphant over several fallen fishmen, her staff dripping, her eyes clear of tears for the first time in years. Then, the main event began. Arlong's eyes had gone feral, his patience snapped at seeing his crew defeated. You inferior beings. I'll show you the difference between our species, he charged at Luffy with frightening speed. Luffy stood his ground, his hat shadowing his eyes. Gear second, steam began rising from his body. Shark on darts. Arlong launched himself like a missile. You never saw Nami as a person, Luffy stated coldly, dodging the attack. Just a tool. Their clash shook Arlong Park to its foundations, marking the beginning of the final battle. A fight between a monster who saw humans as inferior and a rubberman fighting for his navigator's freedom. Shark on teeth. Arlong's massive jaws snapped at Luffy, who barely dodged. The bite took a chunk out of a nearby pillar, demonstrating its lethal power. Gum Gum Jet Pistol. Luffy's fist shot out, but Arlong caught it between his teeth, grinning maliciously. Is this all you've got, Rubberman? Arlong taunted, pulling out his Kiribachi saw sword. I've been ruling this island for years. Ruling? Luffy's eyes blazed with anger. You've been destroying it? He launched into a barrage of attacks. Gum Gum Jet Gatling. The fight moved through Arlong Park, destroying walls and pillars. Then Arlong threw Luffy through a window into a room that made everyone watching freeze, especially Nami. It was the map room. Charts and maps covered every surface, all drawn by Nami over 8 years of captivity. Luffy looked at the blood-stained pen on the desk, understanding dawning on his face. This room represented Nami's prison, her torture chamber. Isn't it wonderful? Arlong gloated. This is where that girl showed her true worth. Something in Luffy snapped the desk, his knuckles white. This desk. He growled, this room, none of it should exist. In the map room, as Arlong boasted about how he used Nami, something changed in Luffy. A dark, overwhelming pressure filled the room, the unconscious use of Conqueror's Haki. Arlong felt a chill run down his spine, his instincts screaming danger. Gear second. Steam erupted from Luffy's body, his skin taking on a pinkish hue. Gum Gum Jet Pistol. The attack moved so fast it was nearly invisible, sending Arlong crashing through several walls. Arlong recovered, enraged. You're just an inferior human. Gear 3rd. Luffy bit into his thumb, blowing air into his bones. His arm expanded to gigantic proportions. Gum Gum Giant Pistol. The massive fist demolished half of Arlong Park. The battle reached its climax. Luffy stretched his leg high into the sky, the air itself seeming to tremble before his rage. This room, this desk, these pens, they made Nami cry. His leg grew to a massive size. Gum Gum. Arlong looked up in terror as the giant leg descended. Giant axe. The attack split Arlong Park straight down the middle, destroying everything, the building, the maps, and Arlong's reign of terror, in one devastating blow. As the dust settled, Nami's prison was no more, and her captain stood victorious. As the dust settled, debris from Arlong Park rained down. The Fishman pirates lay defeated, and their fortress was completely destroyed. The villagers stood in stunned silence before erupting in celebration. Arlong Park has fallen. Nami, still clutching her shoulder where Arlong's tattoo was, watched as Luffy emerged from the rubble. He stood atop the highest remaining piece of Arlong Park and took a deep breath. Nami. His voice thundered across the courtyard. You're my nakama. Tears streamed down Nami's face as 8 years of pain and suffering finally ended. Yes. She whispered, then smiled through her tears. The celebration spread throughout Kokoyashi village and the entire islands. After 8 years under Arlong's tyranny, they were finally free. This is now under marine jurisdiction, Nezumi announced suddenly, strutting through the debris of Arlong Park. I'll be confiscating all of Arlong's assets and… Gum Gum. Luffy's voice came from behind him. Nezumi turned just in time to see a rubber fist heading straight for his face. Pistol. The corrupt marine captain went flying, crashing into a pile of rubble. When he struggled up, he found himself surrounded by very angry villagers and pirates. Nami approached him, twirling her staff. Remember all that money you took from Arlong? What money? Nezumi stammered. I don't know what you're talking. Whack. Nami's staff connected solidly with his head. Wrong answer. Now, you're going to do 3 things. She held up one finger. First, you're returning every berry you stole. A second finger. Then, you're going to help clean up this mess and assist the villages Arlong terrorized. A third finger, accompanied by her scariest smile. Finally, you're going to report to Marine HQ exactly what happened here. How Arlong was corrupting marine officials, how he was terrorizing civilians, and how the Straw Hat Pirates were the ones who stopped him. And why would I do that? Nezumi spat, trying to maintain some dignity. Zoro stepped forward, all 3 swords gleaming. Because the alternative is we let the villagers decide what to do with you. The gathered crowd cracked their knuckles menacingly. I'll do it, Nezumi squeaked. Back in Kokoyashi village, Nezumi was last seen scrubbing floors under the watchful eye of Genzo, while the villagers made sure the true story of their liberation spread far and wide. Later, in a quiet moment, Nami went to see Belle Mare's grave. She placed a fresh bouquet of flowers and smiled. I'm free now, Belle Mere. And I'm going to follow my dream, with my real family. Back in the village, she had Dr. Nako remove Arlong's tattoo and replace it with her design. A pinwheel and tangerine intertwined with a small straw hat, symbolizing Belle Mere, Genzo, and her captain Luffy who helped free her village. The design represented the 3 most important influences in her life. Her adoptive mother's love, her father figure's protection, and the freedom Luffy gave her. The Straw Hats prepared to leave, but not before the village threw them a massive farewell party. The entire village erupted in a 3-day feast. Sanji took over the local restaurant, cooking incredible dishes while Usopp entertained children with tales of his bravery. Zoro, despite his wounds, was drinking and laughing with the villagers. During the party, Nijiko pulled Luffy aside. Thank you, she said softly. Not just for defeating Arlong, but for giving my sister her smile back. Luffy just grinned, mouth full of meat. She, Nami is my navigator. As the celebration continues, Luffy spotted Johnny and Yosaku sitting at one of the tables. He bounced over to them with his signature grin. Hey, you guys were awesome helping us, want to join my crew? Johnny and Yosaku looked at each other, surprised by the sudden offer. They seemed touched but uncomfortable. Big bro Luffy. Johnny started, adjusting his sunglasses. We're really honored, but… Yosaku continued. We can't accept. We're just bounty hunters who barely managed to help. What could we offer to an amazing crew like yours? Besides, Johnny added, we became bounty hunters just to earn enough to eat. But after seeing what you did here, we want to become heroes like you guys. Luffy's expression suddenly turned serious. He took a bite of meat and said, I'm not a hero. Huh? Both bounty hunters looked confused. I'm a pirate, Luffy declared loudly. Do you even know what a hero is? A hero is someone who shares their meat with other people. I want all the meat for myself. Pirates keep the meat. Johnny and Yosaku stared at him, then burst out laughing at his simple logic. That's big bro Luffy for you, they said in unison. But seriously, Luffy continued while chewing, heroes share glory with everyone. I'm doing what I want because I want to. That's what being a pirate means. The bounty hunters nodded, understanding the deeper meaning behind Luffy's words about freedom and following one's own path. Then we'll become our own kind of heroes, they declared, raising their drinks in a toast. She. That's more like it, Luffy grinned, joining the toast before running off to find more food. Big bro Luffy. Johnny called out before Luffy could run too far. We may not be joining your crew. But that doesn't mean this is goodbye forever, Yosaku continued with enthusiasm. They struck their signature pose together. We promise you after we become stronger. Much stronger, Johnny emphasized. We'll follow you to the Grand Line, Yosaku declared. And make our own legend as hero bounty hunters, they said in unison. Luffy turned back, his trademark grin spreading across his face. She, then we'll definitely meet again, because I'm going to be the king of the pirates. It's a promise, big bro, they shouted, tears streaming down their faces dramatically. Zoro, who had been watching nearby, smirked. Just don't take too long. The Grand Line isn't going to wait for you two idiots. Big bro Zoro. They cried even more dramatically, causing everyone around to laugh. The moment was interrupted by Luffy spotting more food and dashing off again, leaving the bounty hunter duo with renewed purpose and a promise to keep. On the morning of their departure, something unexpected happened. As the crew prepared the Going Merry, they heard shouts from the docks. Stop, thief! Everyone turned to see Nami running through the crowd, expertly picking pockets as she went. The villagers' angry shouts turned to laughter when they realized what she was doing. It was her way of saying goodbye. Nami reached the ship and leapt aboard with a graceful flip. Set sail, she commanded with a wink. As away, Nami suddenly lifted her shirt slightly, and wallets rained down onto the dock. The villagers cheered and waved. Take care of our Nami, Genzo shouted. Goodbye everyone, I'm off to draw my map of the world. Nami called back, tears in her eyes but wearing the biggest smile anyone had ever seen on her face. The crew sailed away from Kokoyashi village, leaving behind a legend that would be told for generations, how a rubber boy with a straw hat brought down a tyrant and freed an entire island. At sea, the Going Merry sailed under clear skies, while at Marine headquarters, reports piled up on a senior officer's desk. Sir, we've compiled all recent incidents involving this Straw Hat pirate. The officer spread out multiple reports. The defeat of Buggy the Clown in Orangetown, Morgan's fall in Shelltown, the incident with Kuro at Syrup Village, Don Krieg's defeat at the Barati, and now, Arlong's fall in Konami Islands. This crew has systematically taken down every major pirate power in the East Blue. Not just pirates, sir. They've exposed corruption in our ranks and challenged our authority multiple times. The commanding officer studied the pattern. In just a few months, they've completely disrupted the power balance in East Blue, and their captain, Monkey D. Luffy, sir, set the bounty at 55 million berries. We can't let this crew continue unchecked. Meanwhile, on the Going Merry, the crew continued their journey, unaware that their adventures had caught such serious attention from the Marines. The wind carried them forward, while behind them, their reputation grew with each passing day. The morning sun cast golden rays across the Going Merry's deck as a news coup circled overhead. The bird dropped its delivery, a newspaper that fluttered down, along with something that immediately caught Nami's eye. She picked up the loose paper, and her eyes widened before a laugh escaped her lips. Everyone, come look at this, she called out, unable to contain her amusement. The crew gathered around her, curious about what could make their navigator laugh so freely. There it was. Luffy's first wanted poster. The image showed their captain amid the Kokoyashi village celebration, his signature straw hat perched on his head and that impossibly wide grin on his face. Behind him, the villagers were caught mid-dance. Their figures were slightly blurred, but their joy was unmistakable in the warm sunset light. Shi. Look at that. 55 million berries. Luffy beamed, pointing at the numbers beneath his photo. He was practically bouncing with excitement. That's from the party after we beat Arlong, Nami realized, her fingers tracing the familiar silhouettes of her hometown's people in the background. Despite her usual stance against anything that might attract marine attention, she couldn't help but smile at the memory. They couldn't have picked a less threatening photo, Zoro smirked, but there was unmistakable pride in his voice. Only you could get a bounty looking like you're having the time of your life. The world government's going to hunt down our captain because of a party photo, Usopp said incredulously, then burst out laughing. That's so, perfectly Luffy. Sanji lit a cigarette, shaking his head with amusement. Only you could get your first bounty with a celebration shot, not a battle shot. Though I suppose beating up Arlong isn't exactly something they could photograph. The official text read, Wanted dead or alive Monkey D. Luffy, Straw Hat, Bounty, 55 million berries. Kuraigana Island. Dracul Mihawk sat in his castle, sipping wine and reading the newspaper when the wanted poster fell out. His hawk-like eyes narrowed as he recognized the boy with the straw hat. So, you've made your first mark on the world, he mused, examining the poster. Interesting choice of photo. Though perhaps fitting for one who caught Roronoa's loyalty. He remembered their encounter at the Bharati, how the boy had declared his dream without hesitation. The king of the pirates, was it? Mihawk's lips curved slightly. Let's see how far that unwavering spirit takes you. Somewhere in the New World, aboard the Moby, Portgas d'Ace was enjoying breakfast with his crew when Marco flew in with the newspaper. Oi, Ace. You might want to see this, Yoi, Marco called out, tossing the wanted poster. Ace caught it mid-bite, and his eyes widened before he broke into a huge grin. Luffy, he shouted, standing up so suddenly he knocked over his chair. Look at this. Everyone, my little brother's got his first bounty. The 2nd Division commander proudly showed the poster to anyone within reach. 55 million. And look at that stupid grin, hasn't changed a bit. Your brother seems interesting, Thatch commented, looking at the party scene in the photo. Of course he is. He's my little brother, Ace beamed with pride. Though I should probably warn him about being more careful. Nah, he wouldn't listen anyway. East Blue. In the depths of the East Blue, a massive sea king, the same one that Luffy had befriended on his first day of sailing, surfaced near a floating newspaper. Its eyes focused on the familiar face in the wanted poster. The creature made a sound that might have been happiness, remembering the strange human who promised to meet again. It dove back under, taking the poster with it to add to its collection of shiny things. Fuchsia Village. Mayor, Makino rushed into the bar, holding the newspaper. Look at this. Mayor Whoop Slap adjusted his glasses, his face turning red with anger. That troublemaker, I knew he'd bring shame to our village. But Makino just smiled, looking at Luffy's grinning face. He looks so happy, just like when he was little. He's a pirate now, a criminal. The mayor protested, but his voice lacked its usual conviction. But he's still our Luffy, Makino said softly, pinning the poster on the bar's wall. And look, he's still wearing Shanks' hat. Dayton's hideout. Dayton stared at the poster, tears welling up despite her attempts to look tough. The mountain bandits gathered around her, all trying to get a look at their former charge's first wanted poster. That little brat. She sniffled, trying to hide her face, making us worry like this. Boss, you're crying. Dogrip pointed out. Shut up, I'm not crying, Dayton roared, but carefully folded the poster and tucked it away. First Ace, now this troublemaker. They're both going to give me a heart attack. The Bharati, owner Zeph. One of the cooks rushed into the kitchen, waving the poster. Look who's made the bounty list. Zeph snatched the paper, his mustache twitching as he examined it. So that's the captain that little eggplant chose to follow. He's smiling in a wanted poster? HMPH. Zeph crossed his arms. But there was a hint of approval in his expression. At least that idiot Sanji picked an interesting one. Though with a bounty like that, they'll be having Marines on their tails soon enough. Somewhere in the East Blue, on the deck of a gaudy circus-themed ship, a commotion erupted as one of the crew members rushed to their captain with the newspaper. Captain Buggy, the pirate waved the wanted poster frantically. What is it? Can't you see I'm busy planning our next flashy raid? Buggy snapped. But his eyes caught sight of the familiar straw hat in the photo. His jaw dropped, literally detaching from his face in shock. That rubber brat? Buggy's face turned red with rage, his nose seeming to glow brighter. 55 million berries? That's more than my bounty. Alvida, who had been lounging nearby, slid gracefully across the deck to examine the poster. A small smile played on her lips as she studied the image. My, Monkey D. Luffy, she said, running a hand through her hair. The first man to ever land a hit on me. I'm not surprised he's made such a name for himself. He's nothing but a lucky fool, Buggy ranted, his body parts floating around in agitation. First he humiliates me, and now this? He certainly is. Interesting, Alvida mused, her expression intrigued rather than angry. Interesting, I'll show him interesting. I'll get my revenge in the most flashy way possible, Buggy declared, his crew cheering behind him. Captain Buggy is so cool. While Buggy continued his tirade about revenge, Alvida kept her eyes on the wanted poster, a mysterious smile on her face as she considered the young pirate who had caught her attention. The Red Force, Shanks nearly spat out his drink when Ben Beckman handed him the poster. His laughter echoed across the deck, drawing the attention of his entire crew. Captain, Usopp raised an eyebrow, curious about what had caused such a reaction. Look at this kid. Shanks held up the poster, still laughing. His first bounty poster, and he's throwing a party. And that hat. His hand unconsciously touched where his arm missing. Memories of a promise made years ago flooding back. 55 million on his first go, Ben noted, lighting his cigarette. Not bad for an East Blue rookie. That's my little anchor, Shanks grinned proudly. Lucky Roo, break out the good sake, we're celebrating. Marine Headquarters, Garp, your grandson, Sengoku started, holding the wanted poster with trembling hands. Bawahaha. That's my boy, Garp interrupted proudly, snatching the poster to get a better look. Look at that. Already causing trouble for the Marines. He's got his grandfather's spirit. This isn't something to be proud of, Sengoku roared, his afro seeming to puff up with anger. Do you realize what this means? He's becoming a serious threat. Oh right, I was supposed to pick up those suddenly remembered, completely ignoring Sengoku's concerns. That's not the issue here, Revolutionary Army HQ. Dragon-san, Koala handed him the newspaper, watching her leader's reaction carefully. Dragon looked at his son's wanted poster, a rare smile forming on his usually stern face. His eyes lingered on the carefree expression, so different from his own serious demeanor. The wind of change is blowing stronger, he said cryptically, but there was no mistaking the pride in his voice. Show them what it means to be free, Luffy. Shelltown, at the Marine base in Shelltown, Kobe and Helmeppo were training under the watchful eye of their instructor when another Marine burst in with the newspaper. Look at this. The Marine held up Luffy's wanted poster. Kobe's eyes widened, a proud smile spreading across his face. Luffy-san. That guy's. He's actually incredibly strong, Helmeppo exclaimed, but there was more respect than bitterness in his voice. This means we need to train harder, Kobe declared, gripping his practice sword tighter. So we can be strong enough to face him as proper Marines someday. Back on the Going Merry. According to my calculations, Nami announced, studying her maps, we should reach Logia Town by tomorrow afternoon. Logia Town? Usopp asked. Isn't that the town of beginnings and endings? Luffy interrupted, his voice unusually serious. Everyone turned to look at him, surprised by his tone. Where Gold Roger was born and executed. You seem to know a lot about it, Captain, Sanji observed, lighting a cigarette. Luffy nodded, his expression thoughtful. We need to be careful there. There's a Marine captain, Smokey. He's strong, and that woman with the sword. Luffy? Nami asked, concerned by his uncharacteristic planning. She. Don't worry, His serious demeanor vanished instantly. I have a plan. You have a plan? The crew exclaimed in unison. Yep, first, we need lots of meat, then, whack. That's not a plan. Nami's fist connected with his rubber head. During their afternoon training session, something unexpected happened. As Luffy practiced his punches, a faint black sheen briefly covered his fist. Did you see that? He exclaimed excitedly. Was that? Zoro's eyes narrowed, studying Luffy's hand. Armament hockey. Luffy tried to replicate it, but the coating disappeared almost immediately. It's gone. Meanwhile, Zoro had been focused intensely on his sword training. As he moved through his forms with Wado Ichimonji, something felt different. Each slash seemed to carry more weight than before, cutting through the air with unusual force. It wasn't the sudden, overt manifestation of haki like Luffy experienced, but a subtle shift. A sharpening of his senses, a deeper connection to his blade. He felt a resonance, a heightened awareness of the very air itself, allowing him to cut with greater precision and power. The sword, he muttered, feeling something different in Wado Ichimonji's blade. It feels stronger, sharper, more alive. He held the white blade up, studying it in the sunlight. He wasn't sure what it was, but he knew it was a significant development in his swordsmanship. It wasn't a full awakening, but a precursor, a hint of the power he would eventually wield. Luffy, taking a break from his own training, watched with interest. Zoro's getting it too, he grinned to himself, though he didn't understand the nuances of what Zoro was experiencing. Zoro continued his practice, focusing on a series of precise cuts. Each strike seemed to leave a lingering presence in the air, like invisible extensions of his blade. It was clear his swordsmanship was evolving beyond mere physical technique. He was learning to imbue his strikes with a greater force, a power that wasn't just physical strength but something more. This feeling, Zoro smirked, remembering his battle with Mihawk. This is just the beginning. That's great progress, you too, Nami called from where she was studying navigation charts. Just try not to sink the ship while training. Shelltown. Later that day, a massive shadow fell over the training yard. Bawahaha. Recruits scattered as Vice Admiral Garp appeared, zeroing in on Kobe like a missile. You must be Kobe? Why yes sir. Kobe stood at attention, thinking, Luffy-san actually sent him. And you are? Garp squinted at Helmeppo. Helmeppo, sir, former Captain Morgan's son. Morgan? Garp's expression darkened. The corrupt one who was arrested. Speaking of which, he turned to address the base's current leadership. I've heard some interesting reports about this base. Time for an inspection. The commanding officers paled visibly. But first, Garp cracked his knuckles, grinning at Kobe and Helmeppo. Let's see if you two are worth training, Fist of Love. Both boys barely managed to dodge the sudden attack, though their eyes widened in terror. Not bad reflexes. Garp laughed. Now, show me what my grandson saw in you two. What followed was a brutal test that left both boys battered but standing. Despite the pain, neither gave up. Well then, Garp nodded approvingly. You pass, pack your things. You're coming with me for real marine training. After I clean up this base's remaining corruption, of course. As several nervous officers tried to slip away, Garp's hand shot out and grabbed them. Going somewhere? We need to have a long chat about proper marine conduct. Next stop, Kokoyashi Village Marine Base in the East Blue, Garp announced on his ship. Sir? Kobe asked, still nursing his bruises from the test. Got reports about Marine Captain Nezumi taking bribes from pirates. Garp's expression was stern. Specifically from Arlong's crew. Though seems my grandson already took care of the fishman. Upon arriving at Kokoyashi Village, they found the local marine base in disarray. Captain Nezumi was trying to restore order after his humiliating defeat. Sea Commander Garp. Nezumi stuttered, his whisker-like facial hair twitching nervously. Bawahaha. Heard you've been taking bribes to ignore pirate activities. Garp's cheerful tone carried an underlying threat. That's not very marine-like. I can explain, no need. Garp's fist connected with Nezumi's head. Consider yourself relieved of duty. We'll be doing a full investigation of this base. The scene shows Garp cleaning up corruption throughout the East Blue, following in Luffy's wake but in his own way, through official marine channels rather than pirate methods. Kokoyashi Village. As Garp walked through the village, the locals initially tensed at seeing a marine uniform, but their expressions changed when they saw Nezumi being dragged away in handcuffs. Genzo, the village's mayor, approached cautiously. Another marine? Vice Admiral Garp. Bawahaha. Garp grinned. Heard my grandson helped you folks out with a fish problem. Luffy is your grandson? Najiko, Nami's sister, stepped forward. He freed our village from Arlong. While that marine, Genzo pointed at Nezumi, took bribes and let our people suffer for years. Garp's expression became serious. On behalf of the Marines, I apologize. This isn't what we stand for. He bowed his head slightly. We'll make sure to station honest Marines here from now on. Your grandson. Najiko smiled. He's a good person, even if he's a pirate. Bawahaha. Don't remind me, that troublemaker chose the wrong path. Garp laughed, but there was pride in his voice. But at least he's helping people. The villagers relaxed, seeing this very different kind of marine. Before leaving, Garp made sure to establish proper marine protection for the village and set up communication channels for them to report any future problems directly. Somewhere in East Blue, the sun beat down on the small port town as Johnny and Yosaku faced off against the Sawfish pirates. A crew of 5 with bounties ranging from 2 to 5 million berries. Their captain, Sawblade, Pete, sneered at the 2 bounty hunters. You two think you can take our bone brandishing his serrated sword? We've been terrorizing these waters for months. Johnny gripped his sword tighter. Yosaku, just like we planned. The 2 bounty hunters charged forward, their coordination built from years of partnership showing as they engaged the pirates. But despite their teamwork, they found themselves struggling. Their attacks, while synchronized, lacked the power to decisively end the fight. This isn't working, Yosaku shouted, barely blocking a strike from one of the pirates. We need something more. The fight dragged on, their stamina draining. Finally, through sheer persistence and some lucky strikes, they managed to subdue the pirates, though both were left panting and covered in cuts. As they tied up the defeated crew, Johnny spoke up. Remember what Straw Hat and Ikki told us about hockey? Yosaku nodded, wiping sweat from his brow. Yeah, he said everyone has it, but it needs training. We barely won against these guys, Johnny said, looking at their captured bounties. If we want to be real heroes and stronger bounty hunters, we need to start that training. But how? Yosaku asked, remembering Luffy's words about observation and armament hockey. Johnny stood up, determination in his eyes. We start by keeping our promise to Luffy and Ikki. These small fry bounties, they're just the beginning. After collecting their bounty at the local marine base, Johnny and Yosaku found a quiet spot on the beach to begin their training, remembering Luffy's instructions. Alright, Johnny said, sitting cross-legged. Luffy and Ikki said people start with observation. Blindfold training is one way. Having someone throw things at you while you try to dodge. Yosaku nodded, taking the same position. And for armament, we need to imagine our will as armor, focusing it into our weapons and body. After several hours of training with little progress, Johnny and Yosaku sat down, exhausted and covered in bruises. Maybe we're approaching this wrong, Johnny said, remembering Luffy's words. Luffy and Ikki did say that real battle experience is the best way to awaken and develop haki. Yosaku nodded, rubbing a particularly sore spot. Yeah, he mentioned that just meditation and practice isn't enough. We need to face real danger. But we can't just rush into dangerous situations unprepared, Johnny reasoned. We should keep training while taking on progressively tougher bounties. That way, we'll grow stronger naturally while putting ourselves in real combat situations. Good thinking, bro. Let's check the bounty board tomorrow for someone challenging but not impossible. They gathered their things, knowing that their path to hockey mastery would be longer and more difficult than a simple training montage. Real growth would come from pushing their limits in actual combat, just as Luffy had told them. Johnny and Yosaku stood at the bounty board when a particular poster caught their eye. Steel Fist, Marcus, former lieutenant of Don Krieg, now leading the Steel Pirates. Bounty. 8 million berries, Johnny read aloud. Yosaku leaned in closer. Says here he salvaged some of Krieg's weapons and joined forces with some other crews. Total crew bounty is around 15 million. After seeing Luffy and Ikki take down Don Krieg himself, His former crew doesn't seem so scary anymore, right bro? Johnny grinned. Yeah, but we shouldn't get cocky. These guys are still dangerous. Yosaku pointed to the report details. They've been attacking villages along the coast, using modified versions of Krieg's poison gas weapons. Just then, a fisherman burst into the bounty office. The steel pirates, they've been spotted heading toward Shell Town. Johnny and Yosaku exchanged determined looks. This was their chance to prove themselves. Shell Town. That's only a few hours away by boat, Johnny said, already checking his sword. Those villagers won't stand a chance against poison gas, Yosaku added grimly. We need to intercept them before they reach the town. The bounty hunters rushed to their small ship, which they'd upgraded since their days with Zoro. It wasn't anything fancy, but it had a decent sail and some basic weapons. As they set out, they could see dark clouds gathering on the horizon. Through their binoculars, they spotted a ship with steel-plated sides, definitely Krieg's influence. Look there, Yosaku pointed at something concerning. They've got those rotating shields mounted on their ship, just like Krieg's fleet used to have. But smaller, Johnny noted. They probably couldn't salvage much after the Bharati battle. They needed a plan. A frontal assault would be suicide against those defenses. Lightning split the sky. Perfect cover. Now's our chance, Johnny whispered, rain pelting his cloak. Next wave, we move. Yosaku nodded, gripping his sword. The rain started pouring as they maneuvered their small ship behind the steel pirate's vessel. The storm worked in their favor, masking both their approach and the sound of their grappling hooks. As they climbed the rope in the driving rain, Johnny whispered, remember the intel. Their gas weapons should be stored below deck. If we can sabotage those first. Suddenly, a bolt of lightning illuminated the deck. Through the rain, they could see two guards huddled under shelter near the cabin, but they hadn't spotted them yet. The bounty hunters crouched low, water dripping from their cloaks as they assessed the situation. Just like old times, eh? Johnny whispered, drawing his sword silently. I'll take the one on the left. Yosaku nodded, and they split up, using the rain and darkness as cover. The guards were more focused on staying dry than maintaining watch, huddled together under a makeshift shelter. Johnny moved first, quick and quiet. His hand clamped over the first guard's mouth while Yosaku simultaneously subdued the other. Within seconds, both guards were unconscious and bound. We need to hide them, Yosaku said, already dragging one toward a nearby storage crate. After concealing the guards, they found themselves near the cabin entrance. Through a window, they could see a dim light and hear muffled voices. Johnny and Yosaku carefully pressed themselves against the cabin wall, just below the window. The rain helped mask any small sounds they made as they strained to listen. Through the pounding of rain, they could make out fragments of conversation. Shipment leaves tomorrow at dawn. Boss won't be happy if we're delayed by this storm. Those new gas weapons better work this time. Suddenly, a third voice joined in. The guards should have reported in by now. Johnny and Yosaku exchanged worried glances. Their window of opportunity was closing fast. They need to act quickly. Johnny and Yosaku flanked the cabin door, exchanging their familiar pre-fight glance. No words needed. They'd done this before. 3 fingers up. 2. 1. They burst through the door simultaneously, weapons drawn. The cabin's warm light momentarily blinded them, but their training took over. 3 surprised faces turned toward them. A tall man in an expensive coat, a scarred woman with twin pistols, and a nervous-looking younger man clutching a ledger. Nobody moves, Johnny shouted, his sword gleaming in the lamplight. The scarred woman was fastest, her hands dropping to her weapons, but Yosaku was ready. His thrown dagger pinned her sleeve to the wooden wall before she could draw, and Johnny closed the distance in 2 quick steps, pressing his blade against her throat. I wouldn't, he said quietly. The tall man in the coat raised his hands slowly, but his eyes were calculating. You're making a mistake, he said smoothly. Whatever you're being paid, I can double it. Not interested, Yosaku replied, keeping his weapon trained on the nervous man with the ledger, who looked ready to faint. We're here about the gas weapons. The tall man's expression hardened. Ah, marine dogs, then? Independent contractors, Johnny corrected. The Marines just happened to make the best offer this time. Are those weapons you are not leaving this ship? The nervous man suddenly dropped his ledger, papers scattering across the floor. In that split second of distraction, the tall man moved with surprising speed, drawing a hidden blade from his sleeve. But Johnny and Yosaku weren't rookie bounty hunters anymore. They'd learned from every close call, every scar, every near-death experience. Before the man could complete his strike, Johnny had already pivoted, driving his elbow into the scarred woman's temple to take her out of the fight while simultaneously parrying the hidden blade. Yosaku vaulted over the cabin's central table, tackling the nervous man before he could reach what was obviously an alarm bell mounted on the wall. They crashed into a stack of crates, sending maps and doans flying. The tall man's swordwork forced Johnny back, until Johnny kicked the oil lamp over. In the sudden darkness, one clean punch ended the fight. The man staggered, and Johnny followed up with a precise strike to the temple with his sword's pommel. The tall man crumpled. "Clear," Johnny called out. "Clear," Yosaku confirmed, having already subdued and bound the nervous man. "Found something interesting in these papers, too. Looks like we just stumbled onto something bigger than weapons smuggling." The rain continued its steady pattern as they secured their prisoners. The scarred woman was already stirring, but the ropes would hold. Johnny gathered the scattered doents while Yosaku located the weapons cache, carefully sealed crates marked with warning symbols. "Marine Patrol should be here in 20 minutes, Yosaku said, checking his pocket watch. "Think we should tell them about this?" He held up a dough that appeared to be encoded orders. Johnny studied the paper for a moment, then grinned. "Let's hold onto that for now. Might be worth more than the bounty on these three." They worked quickly to secure the scene, making sure none of their prisoners could reach any hidden weapons or signals. The storm was beginning to ease as they heard the distinctive sound of marine vessels approaching. "Another successful job," Johnny said, clapping his partner on the shoulder. Yosaku nodded, but his expression was thoughtful. "You know this isn't over, right? Those coded orders. Someone bigger is behind this operation." "I know," Johnny replied, his grin turning predatory. "But that just means more work for us, doesn't it? Better pay, bigger adventures. And more people trying to kill us," Yosaku added dryly. "Would we have it any other way?" As the marine ships drew alongside, their searchlights cutting through the remaining rain, the two bounty hunters shared a knowing look. This job was ending, but another adventure was just beginning. The coded orders in Johnny's pocket would lead them to bigger fish, more dangerous waters, and probably more than a few life or death situations. But that's exactly why they loved this life. Every job was a new story, every victory another legend in their growing reputation. And as the Marines began boarding the ship, Johnny and Yosaku were already planning their next move. After all, in their line of work, the next big score was always just around the corner. And if that score happened to involve taking down some larger criminal enterprise, well, that was just another day in the life of two of the sea's most determined bounty hunters. The night's rain had washed away their tracks, but their legend would remain, two shadows in the storm, bringing justice to the lawless seas, one job at a time. In the Grand Line, the darkness of night provided the perfect cover as Hachi, the six-armed former member of the Arlong Pirates, slipped away from the marine custody. His wounds from the battle at Arlong Park were still fresh, but the chaos following their defeat had created an opportunity he couldn't ignore. Unlike his former crewmates who were being transported to prison, Hachi managed to dive into the ocean during the transfer. His octopus fishman abilities allowed him to swim faster and deeper than any marine could follow. The saltwater stung his injuries, but it was also oddly comforting, a reminder of home. For days, he swam through the dark waters of the Grand Line, avoiding sea kings and marine patrols. His mind was heavy with thoughts of his past actions. The time with Arlong had shown him a path of hatred and violence, but deep down, Hachi knew that wasn't who he really was. "Maybe," he thought while resting in an underwater cave, "it's time to be the person I was before all this." As he approached Fishman Island, memories of his childhood flooded back. The colorful coral reefs, the floating bubbles, and the warm welcome of his people. It all seemed like a distant dream now. But the closer he got, the more his resolve strengthened. However, upon reaching the outskirts of Fishman Island, Hachi hesitated. News of Arlong's defeat had surely reached here, and many might view him with suspicion or outright hostility. He was no longer the innocent young fishman who had left years ago. Instead of entering the main city, Hachi found a quiet spot in the outer districts. There, he started small, helping local fishermen with their nets, assisting elderly fish folk with heavy lifting, using his 6 arms for good rather than fighting. Gradually, word spread about the helpful octopus fish man who asked for nothing in return. Some recognized him from his Arlong Pirates days, but his genuine desire to make amends was clear in his actions. One day, while helping a group of young fishman children untangle their toys from some seaweed, an elderly fishwoman approached him. "You've changed, Hachin," she said softly, using his full name. "Welcome home." Those simple words broke something inside him. Tears mixed with the seawater around his face as he realized that redemption was possible, even for someone like him. From that day forward, Hachi dedicated himself to serving his community. He eventually opened a small takoyaki stand, using his cooking skills to bring joy rather than his fighting abilities to cause pain. The irony of an octopus fishman selling takoyaki wasn't lost on him, but it became his way of showing he had moved beyond his past. While he could never fully erase his actions under Arlong, Hachi found peace in his new life. The children's laughter at his stand, the grateful smiles of his customers, and the simple pleasure of being useful to others. These became his new treasures. Sometimes, late at night, he would look toward the surface world and think about his journey. From a pirate to a fugitive to a simple cook, it wasn't the path he'd expected, but it was one he was proud to walk. As evening approached, storm clouds gathered on the horizon, casting long shadows across the Going Merry's deck. Luffy sat cross-legged on the ship's figurehead, trying to remember the important parts of the future he'd seen. Most of it was already getting fuzzy, his mind naturally filtering out what he didn't consider important, keeping only the big moments that mattered to him. But he remembered clearly about Sabo, his other brother who was alive but had lost his memories. Dad will be in Logatown, Luffy thought, a determined look crossing his face. If I can talk to him, maybe he can help Sabo remember us. Remember Ace. The thought of both his brothers made his chest feel tight. He knew he had to do something about Ace and Blackbeard too, but that part was still unclear in his mind. "Everyone," he called out suddenly, jumping down to gather his crew. "Meeting time." The crew gathered around their captain. Zoro leaned against the railing, while Nami stood with her arms crossed. Usopp approached cautiously, and Sanji joined them while taking a drag from his cigarette. "How would you like the scene to continue from here?" What's up, Luffy? We should reach Logatown by tomorrow morning if the weather holds." She, Luffy grinned, but there was something different in his eyes that made even Zoro pay closer attention. "I need to meet someone there, my dad." "Your dad?" the crew exclaimed in unison, except for Zoro who merely raised an eyebrow. "Yep. He's the leader of the Revolutionary Army," Luffy said casually as if discussing the weather. "I need to talk to him about my brother." "Dragon the Revolutionary is your father?" Nami, Zoro, Usopp, and Sanji shouted in unison. "Yep." Luffy picked his nose casually. "Hold on." Nami's eyes widened in realization. "First your grandfather is that crazy marine hero, and now your father is the world's most wanted man." Zoro took a swig from his sake bottle. "That's interesting. Vice Admiral Garp is your grandfather?" Usopp's knees were shaking. "The hero of the Marines?" "The one who cornered the Pirate King multiple times," Sanji added, cigarette nearly falling from his mouth. "But doesn't that mean that the hero of the Marines is the father of the most wanted man in the world?" "What's wrong with your family?" Nami looked like she was about to faint, while Zoro appeared both shocked and amused by the revelation. She, yeah, Gramps is scary." Luffy shuddered, and then his expression turned more serious. "But I need to meet my dad. It's important. I need to ask him about Sabo." "Sabo?" Nami asked, noticing the unusual tone in Luffy's voice. "Yeah, he's my brother," Luffy said cheerfully, though something in his eyes seemed distant. "Brother?" they all exclaimed again, completely overwhelmed by these consecutive revelations about their captain's family. Wait. Nami held up her hands. "You have a brother too? How many more family members are you hiding from us?" "Well, there's also Ace," Luffy grinned. "Another one?" Usopp fell backward. Sanji took a long drag from his cigarette. "So you have 2 brothers?" "Yep. Ace is really strong. He's a pirate too. With the Whitebeard pirates," Luffy beamed with pride. Zoro raised an eyebrow. Whitebeard? The Emperor? That's right. He's their 2nd Division commander, Luffy said proudly. Nami clutched her head. Let me get this straight. Your grandfather is a marine hero. Your father is the revolutionary leader. One brother is with an Emperor's crew. And there's another brother we're just now hearing about? She. My family's pretty interesting, right? That's an understatement, the crew shouted together. But Luffy's smile faded slightly. I haven't seen Sabo in a long time. The crew noticed the shift in their captain's usually cheerful demeanor, but before they could ask more, Luffy's stomach growled loudly. Sanji, meat. You just ate, you rubber idiot. But Sanji, I'm hungry. Luffy whined, momentarily distracted from the serious conversation. Nami wasn't letting him off that easily. Luffy, what happened to Sabo? Why haven't you seen him? The Straw Hat shadowed Luffy's eyes for a moment. He died when we were kids. A heavy silence fell over the crew. I'm sorry, Luffy, Usopp said softly, all his earlier fear forgotten. But why do you need to ask Dragon about him? Zoro asked, his eyes sharp and focused on his captain. Because. Luffy clenched his fists. Sabo is in the Revolutionary Army. He is the 2nd commander. What? Everyone shouted in surprise. But you just said he died, Nami exclaimed, confused. I thought he did. Luffy's face lit up with his characteristic grin. But it seems he lost his memories about me and Ace, and that is why I need to meet with my dad. Your family is really something else, Captain, Sanji commented, lighting a cigarette. But Luffy, Nami said, trying to make sense of everything, how can you be so sure about Sabo being alive? And how do you know he's with the Revolutionary Army? Luffy's face scrunched up in concentration. I just know, and I need to talk to my dad about it in Logatown. That's quite a claim, Zoro commented, studying his captain carefully. There was something different about Luffy today, but he couldn't quite put his finger on what it was. She. Trust me, Luffy grinned, though there was an unusual glint of determination in his eyes. And what's this about helping Ace too? Sanji asked, taking another drag from his cigarette. Luffy's face grew serious for a moment. There's just something I need to warn him about. That's all. You're being unusually cryptic, Luffy, Nami observed, crossing her arms. It's not like you. I'm hungry. Luffy suddenly whined, changing the subject. Sanji, meat. You just ate, you bottomless pit, Sanji yelled, but he was already heading toward the kitchen. She. Luffy laughed, but Zoro noticed his captain's eyes drift toward the horizon where Logatown waited, that same determined look returning to his face. As the crew sailed toward Logatown, Luffy sat in his special seat on Mary's figurehead, unusually quiet. The sea breeze ruffled his hair as he stared ahead, lost in thought. Oi, Luffy, Usopp called out, working on one of his inventions. Want to help me test this new weapon? Usually, Luffy would jump at such an offer, but this time he just shook his head. Later, Usopp, I'm thinking. Luffy's thinking? The entire crew shouted in shock. Hey, I can think sometimes, Luffy pouted, but his eyes remained focused on the horizon. Zoro, who had been napping nearby, opened one eye to observe his captain. Something was different about Luffy today, but he knew better than to push for answers. Whatever it was, he trusted his captain would tell them when the time was right. Nami called out. Logatown's coming into view. Luffy's entire demeanor changed instantly. He jumped up, his familiar grin spreading across his face. Yosh, let's go on an adventure. The Mary docked at Logatown's harbor, and Luffy immediately jumped onto the pier, vibrating with energy. Remember everyone, we need supplies before heading to the Grand Line, Nami said, counting their money, and don't cause any trouble. She, I'm going to see the execution platform, Luffy announced, already running off. Wait, Luffy, Nami called after him. Don't draw attention to, but he was already gone, leaving a dust trail behind him. That idiot, Sanji lit a cigarette. Should someone follow him? Zoro shouldered his swords. He'll be fine. I'm going to find a sword shop. Don't get lost. Marimo, shut up. Love Cook. As the crew split up, Luffy ran through the familiar streets. He got lost again. Still, he couldn't help but grin. This town where the Pirate King died would also be where another great adventure began. The execution platform should be this way. Or maybe that way. Luffy scratched his head, looking between several identical-looking streets. Everything looks different from last time me. As he wandered, the smell of food from a nearby restaurant made his stomach growl. Maybe I should eat first. No, platform first, food later. He turned another corner and bumped into someone, a tall figure in a white marine coat. Smokey. Luffy started to move past, then froze. Standing before him was Smoker, the marine captain who would give him so much trouble in the future. Smoker's eyes narrowed at the casual nickname. Do I know you, kid? Luffy mentally kicked himself for the slip-up. Nope, just heard about the strong marine captain in Logia Town. I'm just a tourist looking for the execution platform. Smoker studied him for a moment, his cigars trailing smoke. Tourist, huh? The platform is in the town square. Straight ahead, can't miss it. He paused, then added, lot of pirates trying to see it these days. You wouldn't happen to be one of them, would you? Me? A pirate? Luffy laughed nervously, trying to edge away. I just want to see where the Pirate King died. Is that so? Smoker's hand drifted toward his jitter. Funny, most civilians don't call me Smokey. Luffy knew he had to think fast, which wasn't exactly his strong point. Well, it's because of all the smoke. Anyone would call you that, she. Smoker took a step forward, his expression darkening. You're a terrible liar, kid, and something about you seems familiar. Just then, a commotion erupted from a nearby street. Shouts about some pirates causing trouble at the marketplace. Smoker's head turned toward the noise, his sense of duty conflicting with his suspicion. Ah! Look! Pirates! Luffy pointed dramatically in the direction of the chaos. As Smoker's attention shifted, Luffy stretched his arm to grab a distant rooftop. Gomu no. Escape. Devil fruit. Smoker's eyes widened as Luffy catapulted himself away. Hey, stop right there. Sorry Smokey. Gotta go see that platform. Luffy called back with a grin, bouncing from roof to roof. See you later. White launcher. Smoker's body transformed into smoke as he pursued Luffy across the rooftops. You're not getting away, pirate. She. This is fun. Luffy laughed as he bounced between buildings, though he knew he needed to lose Smoker fast. He'd changed history enough already just by meeting him early. The execution platform came into view in the distance. There it is, Luffy exclaimed, but his celebration was cut short as a cloud of smoke materialized in front of him. Got you now, Smoker growled, reforming with his jitter raised. No pirate escapes from me in Logia Town. But I'm not supposed to get caught here, Luffy protested, ducking under a swing from the jitter. That happens later, I mean, never. The confused look on Smoker's face was interrupted by a sudden gust of wind that swept through the street, strong enough to make both men stumble. As the wind died down, Luffy heard familiar voices from below. Is that Straw Hat? Captain Buggy? It's him. And look how scrawny he still is, came Alvida's smooth voice. Luffy peered down to see Buggy and Alvida with their crew, staring up at him in shock. Oh hey, big nose. And who are you again, pretty lady? How dare you call my nose big? Buggy exploded, his body parts separating as he launched himself toward Luffy. And how dare you forget about me, you flashy idiot? Chop Chop Festival. Buggy's body split into pieces, surrounding Luffy who was still trying to dodge Smoker. Wait a minute. Luffy said, dodging both smoke and flying body parts. This isn't how it's supposed to go, we're not enemies yet. What do you mean, yet? Buggy shouted, confused but still attacking. Gomu no. Whirlwind. Luffy spun, catching all of Buggy's parts in a spinning attack. But instead of hitting hard, he gathered them up and landed on a nearby roof, away from Smoker. Listen, Buggy, Luffy said seriously, still holding the clown's scattered parts. I know we fight a lot, but you're not a bad guy. You were on the Pirate King's ship too, right? Buggy's floating head turned purple with rage. How do you know about weight, too? She. Let's just say I know some things, Luffy grinned. Buggy, Alvida called from below. The Marine captain is coming. Indeed, Smoker was approaching through the alley, his smoke form billowing menacingly. Hey Buggy, Luffy said quickly. Want to help me escape? For old time's sake. Well, future time sake? I don't understand what's happening, Buggy muttered, but I hate Marines more than I hate you right now. Alvida, get ready. Chop chop cannon. Buggy launched his hands, creating a diversion while Alvida used her smooth powers to create a slippery escape route. She. You guys are fun, Luffy laughed, sliding down Alvida's slick path while Smoker's attacks missed them. Don't get the wrong idea, Straw Hat, Buggy yelled as they escaped. I'm only helping because deep down, you're not such a bad guy, Luffy finished, grinning widely. They landed in a quiet part of town, away from the Marines. Alvida studied Luffy curiously while Buggy tried to maintain his angry facade. Look, Luffy said, becoming serious for a moment. I know we're supposed to be enemies, but we don't have to be. You guys could be like funny rivals instead. Funny rivals? Buggy's eye twitched. Yeah, like when we meet, we can fight a little, but not seriously, more like playing around. Buggy's face contorted through several emotions before settling on exasperated confusion. You're insane, Straw Hat, playing around? We're pirates? But you're not evil, Luffy insisted. You were on Roger's ship. You know what real adventure is like. At the mention of Roger, Alvida's eyes widened. Buggy, you never told me you. Shut up. Buggy's head detached and flew around frantically. That's not something I advertise. Look, Luffy said, adjusting his straw hat, I'm going to be king of the pirates. But that doesn't mean we can't all have fun along the way. The sea's big enough for all of us. King of the... Buggy started laughing hysterically. You're just like him. Just like that red-haired idiot. She. Shanks is pretty great, isn't he? No he's not, Buggy exploded. But there was less venom in his voice than usual. Well, see you later, I need to go and see the execution site. Luffy started running off. Alvida looks at Buggy and says, are going to continue the plan or not? Buggy replies while looking at Luffy back with complicated emotions. Let's forget, he took the fun out of it. After parting ways with Buggy and Alvida, Luffy wandered through Logatown's streets, trying to find the execution platform. While Luffy chased his dreams and buried past grudges, his crew prepared for their journey to the Grand Line, each in their way. Nami strolled through a bustling marketplace, her eyes darting from stalls filled with vibrant fabrics to tables laden with navigational tools. As she browsed, something peculiar caught her attention, a small glass orb with a compass needle suspended within. Intrigued by its odd shape, she stepped into the shop to inquire about it. The shopkeeper, a portly man with a welcoming smile, greeted her warmly. Hello, dear customer. What can I help you with today? Nami pointed at the strange compass. What's up with this compass? Is there something special about it? The owner leaned in, his eyes sparkling with excitement. It's our special for the week. The log pose for the Grand Line. We got it from a traveler just back from the Grand Line. He paused, watching for any flicker of interest on Nami's face. You see, the Grand Line lacks reliable magnetic fields. This is the only way to navigate through its waters. Nami's curiosity deepened. Really? Why haven't I heard about this before? It's no surprise, the shopkeeper replied, shrugging. Not many folks from the East Blue venture to the Grand Line, and vice versa. How much? Nami asked, her mind already racing with possibilities. The shopkeeper grinned. How about 100's eyes narrowed, a determined glint shining through. No way, I want all the mapping tools and the log pose for 10,000 berries. The owner blinked, taken aback by her boldness. Initially feeling a twinge of regret for trying to overcharge her, he quickly shifted gears, a competitive spirit igniting within him. Well, that's quite the negotiation. Let the games begin. With a smirk, Nami launched into her bargaining tactics, deftly picking apart the shopkeeper's offers while simultaneously eyeing the various treasures around her. It was a dance of wits and strategy, each of them vying for the upper hand, and Nami was determined to come out on top. In the bustling market, Sanji wandered with a twinkle in his eye, mesmerized not just by the fresh ingredients but also by the charming women passing by. His culinary instincts tingled as he scanned the stalls, searching for the finest produce to prepare for their journey to the Grand Line. Suddenly, something caught his eye, a glistening fish displayed prominently at one of the stands. Its vibrant colors and unusual shape hinted that it didn't belong in the East Blue. Sanji's heart raced. This could be the perfect addition to his menu. He approached the stall, ready to negotiate. But just as he was about to make his offer, a burly man stepped forward, tossing down a handful of berries, triple what Sanji could afford. The vendor grinned, sealing the deal before Sanji could say a word. Frustrated but determined, Sanji sighed and turned away, continuing his search for ingredients worthy of the Grand Line. Meanwhile, Usopp leaned against a nearby wall, engrossed in his new glass. His brow furrowed as he read about the latest developments in the world, but he wasn't done. He needed more than just information. He was on a quest for ingredients to upgrade his arsenal. The recent battle with Arlong had opened his eyes to the strength of his captain, Luffy, who seemed relentless in his pursuit of power, training daily to master haki. Usopp couldn't afford to fall behind. He had seen Luffy push himself to new limits, and it sparked a fire within him. If Luffy's leveling up, then so do I, he thought, determination surging through him. He dashed off to gather the materials he needed, ready to invent new weapons that would make him a worthy ally in their adventures ahead. Zoro stood in the sword shop, still reeling from his encounter with a girl resembling Kuina. He felt a strong urge to find a sword that honored her memory. His gaze fell on the Sandai Kitetsu, its alluring hilt calling to him. As he gripped it, he felt an electric thrill and declared to the shopkeeper, "I'll take this one." But he needed another sword. The shopkeeper warned him about the sword's cursed nature, but Zoro shrugged it off. He searched for a second blade, spotting Yubashiri priced at 5 million berries, which he couldn't afford. Seeing Zoro's determination, the shopkeeper offered both swords for 100,000 berries. Surprised, Zoro gratefully accepted, promising to honor the swords. Strapping them to his side, he felt renewed purpose. With these weapons, he was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, determined to become the world's greatest swordsman. Meanwhile, Luffy wandered through the market, scanning for familiar sights. Nami said it should be in the town square. He muttered, the overcast sky darkening ominously, hinting at impending rain. As he turned a corner, he nearly collided with a tall figure cloaked in dark green. Looking up, Luffy found himself staring at a familiar tattooed face, one he had only ever seen in newspapers from the future. "Dad," he exclaimed simply, recognizing him instantly. Dragon's eyes widened slightly, taken aback by Luffy's casual acknowledgement. "You know who I am?" She. Of course. You're my dad," Luffy grinned, adjusting his straw hat, his excitement palpable. "Yes," Dragon replied, though his voice carried an unexpected weight. His gaze seemed to cloud over momentarily, lost in thought. "I see," Dragon said finally, his tone low and even. "I didn't think he would tell you so soon." Luffy's grin faltered slightly, sensing a hint of sadness in his father's voice. "Dad, what's wrong?" Dragon's gaze snapped back to Luffy, his expression returning to neutral. "Nothing, Luffy. I'm just surprised, that's all." The air between them was thick with unspoken words, the tension palpable. Luffy, sensing the awkwardness, shifted the topic. "Dad, you know Sabo is your second commander, right?" Dragon's interest piqued a glimmer of curiosity in his eyes. "Yes." Luffy's smile widened. "He is my brother." "Your brother? But he never," Dragon paused, taken aback. "Do you know him from childhood? How certain are you that he's your brother?" He assumed Luffy had seen Sabo's image in a newspaper and recognized a resemblance. Despite the confusion, pride swelled within him for his son's perceptiveness. "Yes, me, Ace, and Sabo exchanged sake cups to become brothers." Luffy's face lit up with joy as he reminisced. But as he continued, the happiness faded. "But Sabo sailed first, and his boat got shot. I thought he was gone. Until I saw him again. I was really happy." Dragon's heart twisted at the raw emotion in Luffy's voice. "But importantly, I know he lost his memories. I want you to arrange a meeting between us in Alabasta in a month, okay?" Dragon struggled to keep up with Luffy's emotional shifts. "Okay." Hearing his father's agreement, Luffy's excitement surged. "And can you protect my ship while I'm here? I want to try to fight smokers seriously this time." Dragon's interest sharpened at Luffy's determination. "All right," he replied, a fierce protectiveness brewing within him. "As long as I'm here, nothing will happen to my son." Luffy nodded eagerly, then asked, "Do you know where the execution site is?" Dragon looked at him, the corners of his mouth lifting slightly. "Follow the wind," he said, and with that, he vanished into the shadows. Luffy's eyes sparkled with admiration. "Sugoi," he exclaimed, his heart swelling. "My dad is amazing. But still, he is even more amazing." He nodded sagely, filled with innocent pride. If Dragon could have heard Luffy's thoughts, a bittersweet ache would have settled in his heart, knowing just how deeply his son looked up to that guy. Meanwhile, at the Marine base, a Marine greeted the smoker. "Welcome back, sir," he said, but the captain didn't respond to the pleasantries. Instead, he asked, "Do you know about the pirates with the rubber devil fruit?" "Yes," Marine number 1 replied, flipping through reports. "The latest HQ intel indicates it belongs to a new pirate named Monkey D. Luffy, with a bounty of 55 million berries." Before the conversation could continue, the door swung open, and Marine number 2 rushed in. "Captain, urgent news. The Straw Hat Pirate and Buggy Pirate are all in the city. Each group has arrived from different ports, but it looks like they're finishing their business and—" He hesitated, glancing at the smoker, the urgency palpable in the air, "and they're converging on the town square." The captain's expression sharpened, his mind racing. This could turn chaotic quickly. "We need to mobilize our forces. If they're all in one place, it's a perfect opportunity to capture them." Marine number 1 quickly organized the information. "We can set a trap in the marketplace." "Prepare the troops," the smoker ordered, determination evident in his voice. "We'll surround the area and catch them off guard. Luffy's not getting away this time." As the Marines began their preparations, Luffy wandered the streets, thoughts of Sabo filling his mind, blissfully unaware of the trap being set for him. He turned to his crew, excitement bubbling. "I can't wait to see what new trouble we get into today." As Luffy made his way through the increasingly crowded streets, the sky continued to darken. Thunder rumbled in the distance as he finally spotted the execution platform rising above the buildings. "There it is," he grinned, memories of the future flickering through his mind. THNG truly started or would start. As he approached the square, he noticed Buggy's crew members trying to blend in with the crowd. As Luffy raced toward the execution platform, his sandals slapping against the cobblestones, the square began to clear. The civilians, seemingly guided by an unseen force, naturally drifted away from the center. Shi. Time to see the view from up here." Luffy grabbed the platform's base and began climbing, his rubber arms stretching to pull himself higher. Meanwhile, around the square, Zoro emerged from an alley, his new swords clinking at his hip. His eye narrowed as he noticed the subtle movements of Marines taking positions behind market stalls and in doorways. So they're setting up an ambush. Sanji appeared from another street, bags of provisions in his arms. He took a long drag from his cigarette, observing the situation. "Looks like our idiot captain is about to start something troublesome again." Nami hurried in from the east, clutching her new log pose. "That moron, he's drawing too much attention." Usopp crept along the edges of the square, his new ammunition ready. "Why'd I have a feeling this is going to turn into another crazy battle?" As Luffy reached the platform's top, Marines suddenly emerged from their hiding spots, forming a perimeter around the square. Captain Smoker stepped forward, his cigars trailing smoke. "Straw Hat Luffy," he called out. "You're surrounded. Come down from there quietly." Luffy stood atop the platform, his grin widening as he looked down at Smoker. "Nope. I'm the man going to become king of the pirates," shocking everyone, while his crew gave different reactions from amused to angry. Then Luffy jumped from the top platform directly at the Smoker saying, "Let me test something." The crowd gasped as Luffy's hockey-coated fist connected with Smoker's face, actually making contact instead of passing through smoke. Smoker's eyes widened in shock as he was sent stumbling backward. "What?" Tashigi exclaimed, her hand gripping her sword. "How did he hit Captain Smoker?" Smoker regained his footing, wiping his jaw with the back of his hand. His eyes narrowed at Luffy. "Impossible. Your punch shouldn't have been able to touch me. What did you do?" The confusion and anger were evident in his voice. Shi. I've gotten stronger," Luffy grinned, bouncing on his feet with excitement. "Come on, Smokey, fight me seriously." From their positions around the square, the Straw Hat crew watched with varying reactions. Zoro smirked, his hand resting on his new swords. So the captain's showing off his new trick. That rubber idiot actually landed a hit on him, Sanji muttered around his cigarette, impressed despite himself. It really works, Nami whispered fiercely to no one in particular. Usopp's jaw dropped. He hit him. The smoker's body began to billow with smoke. Whatever trick you're using, Straw Hat. He raised his jeet, his expression darkening. You're not getting away this time. Luffy grinned, cracking his knuckles. I skucks this, I did. From his hidden vantage point, Dragon watched intently. Armament hockey. Where he learned from. Captain Smoker. Tashigi called out, her sword drawn. The other Straw Hats are heading for their ship. White launcher. Smoker shot forward, smoke trailing behind him. Luffy dodged, barely. Gomu Gomu no. His fist turned slightly black again, pistol. The impact sent Smoker crashing through a market stall. Marines gasped, seeing their captain hit. This is insane. Buggy shrieked from his hiding spot. How is he using hockey? I'm out of here. He turned to his crew. Back to the ship, now? Thunder cracked overhead as the rain intensified. The wind began howling through the streets. Luffy. Zoro's voice carried over the storm. We need to go. Right. Luffy grinned, stretching his arm back. See ya, Smokey. Smoker emerged from the wreckage, his eyes blazing with fury. Straw Hat, his entire body transformed into a massive cloud of smoke, pursuing Luffy through the rain-slicked streets. Meanwhile, at the harbor, the Buggy pirates scrambled onto their ship. Raise anchor. Buggy commanded, his body parts flying around in panic. That rubber brat's gotten too dangerous. But Captain, Moji protested, what about our revenge? We can get revenge when we're not dealing with a hockey user, you idiot. Back in town, Luffy rocketed between buildings, barely staying ahead of Smoker's relentless pursuit. The wind grew stronger, almost supernatural in its intensity. White vine. Smoker's smoke formed tendrils, reaching for Luffy. Suddenly, a massive gust of wind tore through the street. The Smoker's smoke form dispersed, his concentration broken. Through the chaos, a cloaked figure stood atop a building, their presence commanding the very storm itself. Go! Luffy, Dragon muttered under his breath. Luffy landed on the Going Merry's deck with a rubbery thud. Set sail, he shouted, grinning despite the danger. The Going Merry's sails caught the powerful wind, pulling the ship away from the harbor with unexpected speed. They're getting away, a marine soldier shouted from the docks. Smoker reformed his body, watching the Straw Hat's ship disappear into the storm. His eyes narrowed at the cloaked figure on the rooftop, who seemed to command the very elements themselves. Who? Smoker growled, but another gust of wind kicked up a blinding sheet of rain. When it cleared, the mysterious figure was gone. On the Going Merry, the crew fought to keep the ship steady in the turbulent waters. Nami, Usopp called out, clinging to the mast, this isn't natural. I know, Nami replied, her hands steady on the helm. But whatever it is, it's helping us escape. Luffy stood at the stern, his hat held firmly against his head as he watched the marine base shrink into the distance. His trademark grin spread across his face. She. That was close. The storm continued to push them further out to sea, leaving the Marines and a furious Smoker far behind. Gradually, the violent winds began to die down, and the dark clouds started to part. The crew started to gather on the deck, their clothes still dripping from the rain. Nami leaned against the railing, studying her charts with a thoughtful expression. I can't believe we made it out of there, Usopp said, slumping down on the deck. I thought we were goners for sure. Sanji lit a cigarette, shielding it from the dying wind. The Grand Line. We're really heading there now, aren't we? She. Luffy grinned from his special seat on Mary's figurehead. Of course we are. That's where the greatest adventures are waiting. Zoro crossed his arms, a slight smirk on his face. After what just happened in Logatown, the Grand Line better be ready for us. Nami looked up from her chart, her eyes sparkling with determination. According to the chart, we should be approaching the entrance to the Grand Line soon. She frowned slightly at the strange markings on the map. Though something about these routes looks unusual. To the Grand Line then. Luffy threw his fists in the air, and then, One Piece. The crew shared knowing looks and smiles, each lost in their own thoughts about the journey ahead. As the last rays of sunlight broke through the clouds, the Going Merry sailed forward, carrying their dreams toward the greatest sea in the world. The Merry's deck gleams in the morning light as Luffy sits cross-legged on his special seat, watching his nakama with keen interest. Zoro and Sanji clash again. Their movements are faster and more precise than they were in the original timeline. Faint traces of black shimmer on Zoro's arms as he blocks Sanji's kick, while wisps of observation haki guide Sanji's movements. "Oi, Marimo, your armament's getting better," Sanji acknowledges mid-kick, "still not as good as mine though." "Hey, keep dreaming, love cook," Zoro parries with a controlled swing. "I can sense your kicks coming from a mile away now." Luffy's grin widens as he notices the subtle improvements, Zoro's more economical movements, and Sanji's sharper reflexes. She. They're growing stronger faster this time, he mutters to himself. Nami looks up from her maps, watching the sparring match with knowing eyes. "I don't know when I'll learn it, with little training I do," she says softly, a hint of uncertainty in her voice. She. It'll come when it comes. Luffy laughed, feeling the familiar warmth of his own haki flowing through him. His control improved daily, though he kept most of his progress to himself. The important thing is getting stronger. Later, the crew gathered as Nami spread out her chart, worry evident on her face. "From what I gathered in Logia Town, there's something strange about entering the Grand Line," she explained. "The sailors I talked to mentioned currents that flow upward, up a mountain. It sounds crazy, but..." "Up a mountain?" Usopp's jaw dropped. "That's impossible." "This is the Grand Line," Nami replied, trying to sound confident despite her uncertainty. "We need to be ready for anything." "The merchants in Logia Town said we need to aim for a specific channel," Nami continued, pointing at her rough sketches. "Miss it, and the ship could be destroyed against the Red Line." Luffy's grin widened, memories of his first journey flooding back. "Don't worry, we'll make it." Usopp shouted, "Gee guys. I saw the lighthouse." As soon as they heard Usopp, they all went to the deck to check. Once Nami saw the light from very far away, an excited smile was crossed on her face. "Light of guidance?" Sanji questioned. "Yes, it means that the Grand Line entrance was just ahead of that light," Nami explained. "Don't you think entering the Grand Line in this kind of weather is a bit dangerous?" Usopp, who just went down from the crow nest, said with uncertainty. Suddenly, an idea popped up inside Sanji's head, so he told everyone to wait while he rushed toward somewhere. Soon the cook came back with a big barrel on his shoulder. They all looked at Sanji curiously except Luffy, who looked excited, waiting for the cook to explain. "What are you trying to do, Sanji-kun?" Nami asked. "As we're close to the Grand Line, so let's have a celebration." Sanji then placed the barrel down on the wooden floor. He then put his foot down on the top of the barrel while shouting, "To find all blue." Sanji smiled. Luffy then moved up right next to Sanji and copied the cook's previous action. To become the Pirate King, Luffy grinned. The others soon followed. To be the greatest swordsman, Zoro said. To draw the world's map, Nami's turn. To become the bravest warrior of the sea, Usopp stuttered. Off to Grand Line we go, they all shouted excitedly. A smile was seen on each of their faces as they broke the barrel, letting the water inside the barrel splash out. Luffy once again witnessed his crew declaring their dreams. This time the captain had promised himself he would protect them and their dreams. The celebration's energy barely had time to settle before the weather began to change. The clear sky that had blessed their ceremony darkened rapidly as if the Grand Line itself was welcoming them with its infamous unpredictability. "Guys! The Red Line is here!" Luffy's excited shout echoed across the deck. True to its name, the Red Line was a crimson mountain range that separated the east and south blue. The peak of the mountain stretched high above the clouds. The peak was what they were after. However, what truly captures their attention is the water itself, defying all natural laws as it flows upward along the mountain's face. "What the fuck?" Nami whispers, her maps temporarily forgotten as she stares in disbelief. Zoro's jaw dropped. For the first time in years, his stoic mask cracked, revealing wide, unblinking eyes as he stared at the impossible sight. The upward current, defying all logic, seemed to steal the breath from his lungs. Usopp clutches the railing, his knees shaking. "It's so freaking huge," he gasps, voice trembling. Luffy scrambled back to his perch on the figurehead, his eyes gleaming with manic energy. The Going Merry, obedient to the strange current, began her ascent. A low chuckle rumbled in Luffy's chest, escalating into a series of snorts and finally erupting into unrestrained laughter. He bounced on his feet, his rubbery body vibrating with pure, unadulterated joy. "Get ready, guys. This will be your once-in-a-lifetime experience," Luffy said while holding his hat, ready for the impact. "What do you mean by that?" Usopp asked while grabbing the mast. "This will be a long way up," Zoro grinned while standing on the deck to Luffy's right. "A very long way up," Sanji said, putting a hand in front of his forehead, trying to see further. "Why is everyone so calm about this?" Nami asked while holding onto the rail in front of her room. "We're going to sink if we hit the mountain," Usopp stated fearfully. "It should be fun," Luffy smiled. Once the words left his mouth, the Going Merry made contact with the current that was running up to the mountain. Usopp and Nami were so scared that their souls might even come out of their bodies, while Sanji and Luffy were enjoying the remarkable scenery before them. Soon they were met with cloud and mist, once Merry nearly reached the top. She. Just like in my memories, Luffy grinned, bouncing with excitement as he watched his crew experience this for the first time. The knowledge in his head made him appreciate their wide-eyed reactions even more. Soon they were met with a stunning view of the top of the mountain. The cloud was stretched out to each side. A beautiful rainbow was created by the fore-up currents. They also noticed how the air had become thinner than they were used to. Even Merry had started to turn into ice because of the low temperature from up here. However, it wasn't their most concerned problem. The pressing issue was the fact that they were now falling to the fifth current, the only down current. Despite being scared shitless, Nami and Usopp decided to enjoy this moment along with the rest of the crew, since this wasn't an everyday thing. Plus there was no going back now. They then all screamed excitedly once Merry started to head down at high speed. As soon as they were close, Sanji suddenly noticed something from far away. "Hey, there's a mountain ahead," Sanji said. "What? It's not supposed to be there," Nami exclaimed. Luffy stood calmly on Merry's figurehead, his hat shadowing his eyes. He knew exactly what needed to be done, both to save the ship and to help an old friend who'd been waiting far too long. "Everyone," he called out, his voice carrying a certainty that made his crew pause. "Trust me on this one." The whale's enormous eye, larger than their entire ship, slowly turned to look at them. The whale's massive eye fixed upon them, ancient and filled with pain. Luffy remembered all too well. 50 years of waiting, of ramming his head against the red line in desperate hope. "Luffy, do something," Nami cried as they hurtled toward Laboon's scarred hide. She, leave it to me." In one fluid motion, Luffy launched himself from Merry's head, drawing back his fist. He knew exactly where to aim. Gomu no. His arm stretched back as the others watched in shock. Pistol. His fist connected with Laboon's hide, not hard enough to hurt the whale, but enough to get his attention. The massive W, mournful sound that shook the very air around them. Did our captain just punch a whale?" Usopp whispered in disbelief. "That idiot's going to get us all killed," Nami groaned, but her hands were steady on the wheel as she guided Merry away from a direct collision. Laboon's eyes swiveled to focus on Luffy, who had landed back on the ship. For a moment, whale and pirate regarded each other, one ancient and weary, the other young and hopeful. "Hey," Luffy called out, his voice carrying across the waves. "Want to hear a good song?" The whale's expression didn't change, but something in his posture shifted slightly. Luffy could almost feel the decades of loneliness radiating from the massive creature. "Brook's not here yet," Luffy muttered under his breath, too quiet for the others to hear. "But I promise you won't have to wait much longer, Laboon." "What's he doing?" Sanji asked, cigarette forgotten between his lips as he watched their captain face down the enormous whale. Zoro's expression was thoughtful as he observed Luffy. "Whatever it is, he seems to know what he's doing." The tension in the air was thick as Laboon continued to study them. One wrong move and the whale could easily destroy their ship with a single motion. "Oi, Laboon," Luffy called out again, his voice carrying both authority and warmth. "Fighting the red line won't bring them back, but I've got a better idea." The whale's eye widened slightly at being addressed by name. The others exchanged confused glances. How does he know the whale's name? Nami whispered. Before anyone could respond, Luffy continued. Let's fight. If I win, you have to stop hurting yourself and wait for me instead. He's challenging a whale to a fight? The crew shouted in unified disbelief. Laboon's massive form shifted, a low rumble emanating from deep within him. Whether in acceptance or anger, none but Luffy could tell. But first, Luffy's expression grew serious. Oi, old man, I know you're in there. As if on cue, a hatch on top of Laboon's head creaked open, revealing a familiar flower-headed figure. Who's making all this racket? Crocus emerged, his expression stern as he surveyed the scene. More troublemakers trying to enter the Grand Line? She. We're not trouble, Luffy grinned. Well, maybe a little, but we're the good kind. Crocus raised an eyebrow, studying the strange crew before him. You seem different from the usual rookies. How did you know about this entrance? And how do you know Laboon's name? That's because. Luffy paused, choosing his words carefully. I know about the promise those pirates made to him. About Brook and the others. Both Crocus and Laboon went completely still at these words. The tension in the air grew thick enough to cut with a knife. What do you know about them? Crocus asked, his voice carefully neutral but his eyes sharp with suspicion. I know they didn't abandon Laboon, Luffy stated firmly, meeting both Crocus's gaze and Laboon's massive eye. And I know where one of them is. He's still trying to keep his promise. A deep, mournful sound emerged from Laboon, making the Going Merry tremble. The sound from Laboon grew louder, a mix of hope and pain that made everyone's hearts ache. Crocus gripped the railing, his knuckles white. Young man, he said slowly, if you're lying about this. I never lie about promises, Luffy interrupted, his voice carrying that rare serious tone his crew was starting to recognize. Brook is alive. He's stuck in the Florian Triangle right now, but I'm going to find him and bring him back here. Laboon's eye fixed on Luffy with an intensity that would have made most men quake, but Luffy just grinned back. That's why we're gonna make a new promise. Okay, Luffy declared, standing atop Laboon's massive head, his signature grin stretched wide. He paused, then, with a sudden, surprising movement, he ripped the Going Merry's main mast. A collective gasp swept across the crew. Usopp's panicked scream, "What is he doing with our mast?" echoed across the water, his voice cracking with disbelief and horror. Nami's jaw dropped, her hand flying to her mouth. Zoro stared, his usual stoicism momentarily shattered. Even Sanji, usually unflappable, looked stunned. Luffy, seemingly oblivious to the uproar, knelt beside the fallen mast, his expression suddenly serious. He gently stroked the splintered wood. "I'm sorry, Mary," he mumbled, his voice low and sincere. "I'm really sorry. But I need to make a new promise, and this is how I'll do it." He looked up at his crew, his grin returning, though tinged with a newfound seriousness. "We're gonna get you fixed, Mary. In Alabasta. We'll find the best shipwright there is, and we'll make you better than ever." His voice resonated with determination. "This time, no more shortcuts, we're gonna do it right." Luffy began painting crude shapes on Laboon's head, his tongue sticking out in concentration. The whale remained perfectly still as if understanding the significance of this moment. There, Luffy stepped back to admire his handiwork. A crude version of the Straw Hat Jolly Roger sprawled across Laboon's scars. "This is our promise mark. You can't ram your head anymore because it'll ruin the painting." That's your big solution," Nami facepalmed. But Crocus's eyes had widened in understanding. After 50 years of watching Laboon hurt himself, perhaps this childish solution was exactly what was needed. "Until I bring Brook back," Luffy declared, standing proud atop Laboon's head, "this mark means you're part of my crew, and I never abandon my crew." Laboon's next cry was different, lighter somehow, carrying a note of joy that Crocus hadn't heard in decades. "Young man," Crocus called out, his voice rough with emotion, "do you have any idea what you're promising?" "Yup." Luffy's grin widened. "I'm promising to bring back his Nakama, and I'm going to be king of the pirates anyway, so it's no problem." The absolute conviction in his voice made even Crocus smile. Perhaps this time would be different. But first, Luffy punched his palm. "We still need that fight, can't make a proper promise without one." "Oi, his crew protested. "You're still going to fight the whale?" But Laboon's eye had sparked with interest, and before anyone could stop it, the massive whale rose, accepting Luffy's challenge. What followed was possibly the strangest battle any of them had ever witnessed. Luffy bounced around like a rubber ball while Laboon tried to catch him with carefully measured movements, as if the whale understood it needed to hold back its true strength. "They're fighting," Usopp muttered in disbelief. "More like playing," Zoro observed with a knowing smirk. After several minutes of this bizarre display, Luffy declared it a draw. "You're strong," he announced to Laboon. "When we come back, let's have another match, and this time, you'll get to fight Brook too." Crocus approached the crew while Luffy continued chatting with Laboon. "That captain of yours. He's either completely insane or..." "Both," Zoro supplied. "He's both, but he means what he says," Sanji added, lighting a cigarette. "When he makes a promise, he keeps it," Nami finished. "No matter what." Crocus studied them all carefully before nodding. "Then I'll tell you what you need to know about entering the Grand Line. But first..." He turned to Luffy. "You said Brook is in the Florian Triangle?" "Yup. He's stuck there with his broken ship. But don't worry, we'll find him." "Then you'll need this." Crocus pulled out an old eternal pose. "It won't take you directly there, but it'll help guide you through the first part of paradise." "We don't need..." Nami started to say, but Luffy cut her off. "Thanks, Flower Asen. Shi. See, Laboon? It won't be long now." The whale's happy cry echoed across the Twin Capes as if the very ocean was celebrating this new promise. "Now then," Crocus's expression turned serious as he led them into his lighthouse. "Since you already have us on how to sail this water." He spread out a weathered map on the table. Nami touched the log pose on her wrist as she leaned in to study the route. "Now that you've made it past Reverse Mountain," Crocus said, "you need to understand what lies ahead. The real challenges of the Grand Line are just beginning." "The weather's already crazy," Nami noted, glancing at her log pose. "Nothing like the East Blue." "Exactly. Each island has its magnetic field. That log pose is your lifeline. Without it, you're as good as dead out there." Luffy was still excited about their promise to Laboon. "When we come back after going around the Grand Line, Laboon will get to hear a whole new song. First we need to survive getting there," Usopp muttered. "Which reminds me," Crocus continued, "there are 7 routes you can take from here. Your log pose will lock onto one of them." 7 different paths. Nami mused, studying her log pose carefully. "Each with its dangers," Crocus warned. "The Grand Line shows no mercy to the unprepared." As they discussed routes and preparations, 2 soaking wet figures suddenly climbed onto the cape. A man with a crown and a young woman with blue hair. Please," the man shivered, "we're Mr. 9 and Miss Wednesday. Could you give us a ride to Whiskey Peak?" Luffy fought back a grin as he watched Miss Wednesday try to act suspicious. Knowing her true identity made her attempts at being mysterious kind of funny. "Who are these weirdos?" Usopp asked bluntly. "We're Frontier agents," Miss Wednesday explained, wringing water from her clothes. "Our mission failed and we lost our ship." "Suspicious," Zoro commented, hand resting on his swords. Nami stepped forward. "And what's in it for us if we help?" "We can pay you," Mr. 9 said quickly, both of them bowing deeply. "Well then." Nami grinned, a glint of calculation in her eyes. "Welcome aboard." Crocus regarded them with a mixture of weariness and disdain. "You're here again," he grumbled. "And it's because of that straw hat kid that you couldn't even properly say goodbye to Laboon before you sank." Mr. 9 and Miss Wednesday flinched at the reminder, their faces betraying a mixture of shame and lingering fear. They remained silent, the memory of their near-death experience still fresh. She. The whale's our friend now," Luffy declared cheerfully, oblivious to the undercurrent of tension. "No one's gonna hurt him." The night was filled with boisterous celebrations, the crew reveling in their reunion with Laboon and their successful, if slightly unorthodox, navigation of Reverse Mountain. New friendships were forged, and old bonds strengthened. The Going Merry, patched up but still bearing the scars of their journey, felt alive with the energy of the crew. As dawn broke, the Going Merry set sail into the Grand Line proper, the vast, unpredictable ocean stretching before them. "Thanks for everything, old man. We'll be back, and when I'm Pirate King, Brook and I will celebrate with you." "Laboon?" Luffy shouted, waving enthusiastically. "We'll bring Brook, I promise." Laboon breached the surface one last time, letting out a mighty cry. Watching the Going Merry sail away, Crocus murmured, I truly hope they're the pirates we've been waiting for all this time. But that man. Luffy, was it? He has an uncanny air about him, doesn't he, Roger? That didn't go as planned, Miss Wednesday muttered. Just stick to the plan, Mr. Nine replied quietly. Once we reach Whiskey Peak, we'll… His voice trailed off as he watched the Merry disappear. The thrill of the chase, and the promise of Whiskey Peak, sharpened his focus. Luffy, oblivious to their concerns, grinned. A few bounty hunters? A warm-up? He was already picturing the adventures ahead, the thrill of Whiskey Peak, and the joyous reunion with Brook and Laboon. The Going Merry pitched and rolled as another impossible weather change struck, the third in as many hours. Snow fell heavily on one side of the ship while the other baked under intense sunlight. The crew scrambled to adjust the sails yet again, all except Luffy, who sat cross-legged on Merry's figurehead, occasionally glancing at their two passengers with barely concealed amusement. The wind's changing again, Nami called out, studying her log pose. Everyone, hard to starboard. This is insane. Usopp shouted, struggling with the ropes. How can it be snowing and sunny at the same time? Welcome to the Grand Line, Mr. Nine said smugly, though he and Miss Wednesday had yet to lift a finger to help. Nami-san, how much snow shoveling of love would like me to do? Sanji asked with hearts in his eyes. Please continue until it stops snowing, Sanji-kun, Nami, causing Sanji to start shoveling at a rapid pace. Doesn't this ship have a heater or something? Mr. Nine asked as he and Vivi shivered in their blankets. I'm cold, Vivi said. Shut up. You're not guests, Nami shouted. Go shovel some snow to warm up. Behold, the man who came from the sky, Mr. Snowman, Luffy said after making a funny-looking snowman. Ha ha ha, Usopp said. Amateur. Behold, the beauty of my soul, Snow Queen, he said after making a sculpture of a woman out of snow. All of them clapped at that before Luffy shot one of Mr. Snowman's wooden arms at her, smashing its head and pissing off Usopp. Why'd you do that, you jackass? He screamed as he kicked Luffy's snowman's head in. You bully, Luffy shouted. Soon they were throwing snowballs at each other. This means war, the two shouted before throwing snowballs at each other. From her vantage point inside, Nami watched the snowball fight with a mix of exasperation and amusement. How do they have so much energy? Her words were barely out when a blast of hot air swept across the deck, instantly melting their snowy creations, and leaving Luffy and Usopp standing in puddles with confused expressions. Usopp's carefully sculpted Snow Queen, a masterpiece of icy artistry, dissolved into a slush puddle before his eyes. He crumpled to his knees, a dramatic wail escaping his lips. My Snow Queen, my beautiful, ephemeral creation. Tears welled in his eyes, blurring the already melting masterpiece. Mr. Snowman, no, Luffy joined in the theatrical mourning. Focus on the weather, you idiots, Nami screamed as lightning suddenly crackled overhead. The barometer's going crazy. Nami Swan, should I protect you from this dangerous lightning with my body? Sanji twirled as he danced. The wind, a fickle beast, shifted without warning, throwing the Going Merry onto its side. Before they could regain their balance, golf ball-sized hail hammered the deck, each impact a sharp, stinging blow. Now it's hailing? Mr. Nine shrieked, diving for cover. Usopp yelped, shielding his head with a makeshift shield of planks. While fighting to keep the helm steady, his knuckles were white against the wood. Then, as quickly as it began, the hail ceased, replaced by a thick, suffocating fog that swallowed the ship whole. The air grew heavy, the silence broken only by the creak of the ship and the muffled gasps of the crew. She. The Grand Line is fun, Luffy laughed, using his rubber body to bounce the hailstones back into the sky. This isn't fun at all, Miss Wednesday protested, ducking behind a barrel. Zoro snored loudly from his spot against the mast, somehow sleeping through everything, including a hailstone that bounced off his head. As the weather becomes somewhat steady, Luffy sat on Merry's head, his observation hockey spread across the ship like an invisible net. He could feel everything, Zoro's steady presence as he slept, Sanji's movements in the kitchen, Nami's focused energy as she studied her maps, and Usopp's nervous but determined aura as he worked on his inventions. While his observation wasn't at a master level yet, it was enough to keep track of his nakama. Nami Swan. Miss Wednesday. I prepared a special drink to combat the cold, Sanji twirled over with a tray. Thank you, Sanji-kun, Nami smiled, making the cook melt. What about my drink? Mr. Nine asked hopefully. Make your own, suspicion bastard, Sanji replied flatly, his chivalry notably absent for male guests. Oi, Zoro, Sanji, Luffy called out. Show me how far you've gotten. The two rivals smirked, their arms simultaneously turning black with armament hockey. They'd learned the basics faster than expected, probably due to their constant competition. Watch this, shitty captain, Sanji's leg darkened as he performed a kick that split a wave in half. Not to be outdone, Zoro sliced through with a hockey-infused blade. Getting better at maintaining it, he grunted. She. You guys are awesome, Luffy grinned, his arm turning black. I can hold it longer now too, and Gear 3rd doesn't shrink me anymore. Your observation hockey's still better than ours though, Sanji admitted, lighting a cigarette while effortlessly dodging a stray piece of hail without looking. Because I need to protect everyone, Luffy declared with his characteristic determination. His conqueror's hockey flared briefly, making Mr. Nine wobble but not quite faint. Still need to work on that one, Luffy laughed sheepishly. Oi Usopp, Luffy called out. Try hitting me while I use observation hockey. Usopp grinned, loading his slingshot. Don't underestimate my new ammunition, adhesive star. Luffy dodged most shots but got caught by one sticky pellet. She. That's sneaky. Meanwhile, Zoro was teaching Sanji some sword basics, much to the cook's annoyance. I kick, Moss head. I don't need swords, Sanji grumbled. Understanding blade work will help you predict enemy movements better, Zoro explained gruffly. Now watch the angle of attack. Nami observed from her position at the helm, occasionally calling out weather changes. Whiskey Peak should be visible soon. Luffy stopped stretching the mast. But Nami, I'm practicing Gear 3rd control, Luffy whined. Not on our ship. Mr. Nine and Vivi watched in amazement as the crew seamlessly switched between training and their regular duties, even in the chaotic Grand Line weather. Zoro watched their passengers from the side of his eyes, his hand resting casually on his swords. Something about their names nagged at his memory. Mr. Nine and Miss Wednesday, he muttered under his breath. Where have I heard those types of codenames before? His thoughts were interrupted by Luffy's sudden laughter. The captain was perched on Mary's head, grinning widely as he stared into the distance. She. I can sense a lot of people ahead. Luffy announced his observation of hockey stretching out. It feels like a whole town is waiting. Mr. Nine and Miss Wednesday exchanged quick, nervous glances that didn't escape Zoro's notice. A welcoming party? Nami asked skeptically. Something like that, Luffy grinned mysteriously, making their passengers shift uncomfortably. Zoro's eyes narrowed further. Those code names reminded him of something he'd heard in his bounty hunting days, something about an organization. Land ho, Usopp called from the crow's nest. There's something weird about those cacti though. Ah, the historic cactus rocks, Mr. Nine announced with exaggerated grandeur, the pride of Whiskey Peak. Sanji emerged from the kitchen, wiping his hands on his apron. Dinner's ready for Oi, what's with those giant cacti? They look like gravestones, Zoro commented deliberately, watching their passengers flinch slightly. Don't say scary things, Zoro, Usopp called down, his knees already shaking. Super cool, Luffy shouted, stars in his eyes despite having seen them before. Hey Usopp, let's climb them later. I suddenly have a can't climb cacti disease. Nami bonked both their heads. Nobody's climbing anything. We need to resupply and get the log pose set. While the others discussed the approaching island, Zoro continued puzzling over the familiar way they carried themselves, those practiced poses. Where had he heard about numbered agents before? Luffy stretched his neck to peer at the approaching island, his grin widening as he sensed the hidden bounty hunters. This was going to be fun, but first. Oi Zoro, he called out. Want to have a drinking contest when we land? Zoro raised an eyebrow at the unusual request from his captain but smirked. Bring it on. Miss Wednesday whispered something to Mr. 9, both looking increasingly nervous as they approached the island. Zoro caught fragments like, stronger than expected, and, might be trouble. She, Luffy laughed, making both agents jump. The Grand Line is full of surprises, right? The knowing look in their captain's eyes made even Nami pause. Sometimes Luffy seemed almost wise. She shook her head, now that was a scary thought. As the Mary glided into the harbor, fog parting around her bow, dozens of figures emerged along the shoreline. Welcome to Whiskey Peak. The crowd erupted in cheers and celebration. They were shocked to see the townspeople were celebrating their arrival. Some were waving their hands, some were whistling, and the others were cheering as soon as they saw the ship was at the dock. A party? Usopp's jaw dropped. They're welcoming pirates? A town that welcomes pirates, that's new, Sanji said. We should probably sleep with our eyes open, Zoro smirked. Looking at the cheering crowd, the crew thought Zoro was just joking. Unknowing that Zoro wasn't fully joking around. Grand Line was a dangerous place that was something no one could deny. Therefore, keeping their eyes out for danger was essential, and Nami would do just that, as the navigator also had the same thought as the first mate. However, Sanji soon forgot his doubt as multiple ladies waved at him. Some even blew him kisses. Usopp had also lost. As soon as he heard some of them praise the crew as the warriors of the sea, the sniper quickly puffed his chest to show the pride of the so-called Captain Usopp. Suddenly, a tall man with a ridiculous curly hairstyle came to greet them once they finished docking. Welcome, pirates. My name is Igarappoi, this town's mayor. Whiskey Peak is the Grand Line's most hospitable rest stop, so I would like to invite you to take a rest from your courageous and weary adventure, and enjoy the drinks, food, music, and cheerful atmosphere before you go onward on your next journey. Right at the moment the mayor had finished his speech, Luffy quickly rushed toward the mass of people without a single word and headed to wherever that delicious food was waiting to satisfy his belly. But Zoro noticed his captain's eyes scanning the crowd with unusual focus. And, he's gone, Sanji said after blowing out a trail of smoke. However, the cook soon also searched for the group of beautiful ladies from before, then made a jump right into the center of the group as soon as he spotted them. Another one, Nami sighed. Count him in, Zoro said while pointing at Usopp, who was dramatically retelling the story of them going up and over the reverse mountain to a group of people. Ah, Mr. 9, Miss Wednesday. Welcome back, Igarappoi called out as their passengers disembarked with suspicious haste. Nami stepped forward, and all business. How long does the log pose take to set here? Please, such matters can wait, first, we feast. Nami then went with the flow, and might as well steal from these people. Besides, there wouldn't be anything wrong as long as Zoro still kept his eyes on the crew and the ship. Not sure if they're truly a bunch of fools, or they're just better actors than those townspeople. Either way, we might as well enjoy this moment, Nami said, then quickly joined those boys. As the crew was swept toward the town by the cheering crowd, too cheerful, Zoro thought, his eyes scanning the crowd. Their smiles are too wide, their movements too precise. It's like watching a well-rehearsed play. A play with hidden daggers. Dusk soon fell, as the crew was enjoying their time with a joyful atmosphere that came from the party. Some enjoyed small drinking or eating contests, some took their time to retell their journeys. Soon, Luffy also jumped into a drinking competition with Nami, right after Zoro was defeated. Then the music started, and the crew decided to join in with a few dances. Usopp and Sanji were seen dancing happily among the group. This was another wonderful time for the crew. Usopp stood on a table, regaling the crowd with increasingly outlandish tales of his 8,000 followers. Then the night came. The party had also quieted down, as everyone had finally fallen into their slumber. The islanders soon gathered around, right before they had made sure the Straw Hats had slept soundlessly inside one of their buildings. Was this necessary? We could have taken care of them right at the post. They only have 5 members after all, said. You should have known better, Ms. Monday. Underestimating our targets will only lead us to our downfall, the mayor, or rather Mr. 8, said. What, 55 million berries? The trio shouts in disbelief. For those morons? Mr. 9 said. Don't be stupid, Igaram said as he put the poster away. Looks can be deceiving. That goes for cough asterisk ma maamaaah, all of you. Sorry, Miss Monday said as she rubbed the back of her head. It's okay. Igaram addressed his fellow bounty hunters. These rookies were completely fooled. Anyway, we must hurry and search for their ship while the others restrain them. The bounty would be less if we killed them, so I would rather let them live for now, Mr. 8 continues. My. What poor actors you all are. Zoro's voice cuts through the night like steel. 100 bounty hunters playing at being townsfolk. I've seen better performances in street theater. The group started at the new voice. They quickly turned toward the roof of the nearest building, where Zoro was sitting while crossing his hands. Not to mention the shadow that covered his face, letting only his eyes' color shine while sitting under the moon, creating some kind of big villain's vibe. The celebrating townspeople freeze, their masks of hospitality crumbling. Impossible. Igaram's curls quiver with rage. The sleeping drug should have. Hey, Zoro ties his bandana with deliberate slowness. A true swordsman never drinks himself to sleep in enemy territory. Though I have to admit. He draws Wado Ichimonji, the blade catching the moonlight. Watching you all try to outdrink Nami was pretty entertaining. Kill him, Igaram roars, raising his saxophone gun. Zoro's eyes gleam dangerously as he unsheathes his second sword. 100 against 1? His grin turns predatory. I'll try not to end this too quickly, Baroque works. You bastard, how do you know the company name? Igaram shouts. When I was in the same line of work, I was offered to join by your company once, Zoro says. Was it a secret? Finish him, Igaram roars, before they all notice that he disappeared. What? He's gone? Vivi whispered in disbelief. What are you looking at? Zoro asked as he looked up at the spot he was at just now like he didn't know either. All of them looked at him with bulging eyes as he smirked. Zoro was all ready to fight them. So then, shall we? Zoro moved like a phantom through the narrow streets, his 3 swords a blur of motion. He didn't just fight, he danced, his movements a deadly ballet of precision and power. He used the shadows to his advantage, striking from unexpected angles, and disarming his opponents with swift, precise movements. The clash of steel echoed through the night, punctuated by the cries of surprised bounty hunters. Nami was seen hiding behind a building. She slowly looked around back and forth, left and right, making sure no one saw her. Then she quickly rushed toward another building. Suddenly, a bunch of the townspeople from before rushed in her direction, making Nami jump and quickly hide away, thinking she had been found. However, Nami then heard it must be something else as those people kept heading toward a different way. Once she had made sure no one was spotted in her range of sight, Nami slowly got out of the barrel where she had been hidden. It seems like Zoro can handle them, Nami with Barry's eyes. Let's go get the treasure. The captain watching on the nearby roof. He then let out a small laugh, impressed by the mess Zoro had created so far. Luffy knew Zoro would have no difficulty taking care of the underlings. Even though Luffy doesn't want to interfere with Zoro's fun, the captain still needs to stop the swordsman from attacking Mr. 9 and Mr. 8 pairs. However, he soon became panicked once he saw Zoro had taken a few more steps forward. Therefore, without a second thought, the captain quickly launched himself toward the first mate. Thankfully, the swordsman had reacted on time and shielded himself with a sword in hand, but because of the impact, Zoro was still pushed quite far back, creating 2 lines of rubble along the way. What the hell, Luffy? Zoro asked. Don't attack them, Luffy commanded, while standing beside the first mate. Hearing the seriousness in his voice, Zoro quickly complied without another word. The swordsman casually swung his sword to get the blood off, then resheathed it. However, Zoro's hand still put on the sword, as he didn't fully let his guard down. The group of hunters had been anxious ever since Zoro had proved his strength to them by finishing their people with only 1 sword. Therefore, with Luffy now coming to back up the swordsman, perhaps they wouldn't live long enough to see tomorrow morning. Suddenly, they heard a hissing sound, then came the explosion. All of them had to shield themselves in case they were blown away by the big gust of wind. Inside the dust, 2 new figures were revealed when the sight was clear. The hunter group was shocked once they realized who the newcomers were. Mr. 5 and said frighteningly. What are you doing here? Mr. 8 asked. Extermination duty, Mr. 5 said coldly, not even caring about the 2 pirates. The boss sent us here because two people within the organization knew about his identity. He didn't seem to like that idea, Mr. Five explained. So we decided to investigate, and you'll never guess what we've learned, Miss Valentine's Day said with a smile. All of them listened while Nami listened from the shadows. We've learned that two of Baroque Works' number agents are spies from a distant kingdom. He knows, Igaram thought as Mr. Nine stated his crown was a hobby. He then jumped up and started firing at the two of them. Igarapapa, he shouted. So long as IIGARAM, captain of ALABASTA's Royal Guard breed, you will not harm the princess. Igaram, captain of Alabasta's Royal Guard, Mr. Five said as the smoke cleared with him holding a picture of Vivi. And Vivi Nefertari, princess of the Royal Kingdom of Alabasta. By order of Mr. Zero, both of you are to die. Run, Princess Vivi, Igaram shouted as he kept up his attack. Igaram, she shouted. Everyone was watching the cloud of smoke, which was all the distraction that Mr. Nine needed to untie her. Huh? Run, he whispered before Igaram was blown away by a bomb. Igaram, she shouted as she looked to see his smoking figure on the ground. What the idiot thinking now, confusing Zoro? I don't know who you all are, but our target isn't any of you, Mr. Five said. Hand over Princess Vivi and we may just let you leave alive, Miss Valentine's Day said before laughing. She. These guys look fun, Luffy grinned, cracking his knuckles. Hey Zoro, can I fight the booger guy? Booger guy? Mr. Five growled indignantly. Kyahaha. He called you booger guy, Miss Valentine laughed. Oi Luffy, I was in the middle of, Zoro started. But I'm Boo Red, Luffy whined. And he makes things explode, that's cool. Huh? They both said, just as confused as the rest of them. Hey. You're either brave or stupid kid. Mr. Five smirked as his partner laughed. We're on a level far above all the rest here, she said. We're officer agents. Wait a moment. Miss Monday said as she started to sit up. If anyone's fighting, it's me. And me. Mr. Nine said as he pulled out his bats and stood between Vivi and the Mr. Five pair. But, why? Vivi asked. I haven't a clue as to what's going on, but we've been partners for a long time, he said as Miss Monday stood next to him. Besides, we're already in trouble for being beaten. Might as well go down helping a friend, she said as she cracked her knuckles. Hey. That's cute. Mr. Five said as he picked his nose with both fingers. I'll deal with you both since you're so eager to die. Double nose fancy. He shouted as he held up his hands towards them all. Cannon. He shouted as he flung them at them. Mr. Nine and Miss Monday braced themselves. Luffy stepped in the path of the boogers. He was then engulfed in a huge explosion, shocking everyone around. Luffy. Zoro shouted. HMPH. Guess the kid had a death wish, Mr. Five said. Kyahahaha. That's what he gets for playing hero. Miss Valentine's Day laughed. Everyone just stared as the smoke cleared, revealing an unharmed and smiling Luffy. What? Look, my arm's all black and cool, Luffy showed off, blocking Mr. Five's explosions. It's like wearing armor, but better 'cause I can still stretch. He took those explosions like they were nothing, thought Vivi, Igaram, Mr. Nine, and Miss Monday. What kind of trick did you pull? Mr. Five asked in equal disbelief, not understanding what hockey is. Before anyone knew what happened, Mr. Five and his partner were rammed into a far-off building. He knew Zoro could beat them with no problem, but he wanted to demonstrate how powerful he was. And he also had a hint of resentment towards them for interfering with the fight between the giants. Whoa, that's fast, Mr. Nine said. Soon after, the building erupted in multiple explosions. Through the smoke, they saw Miss Valentine's Day floating high in the air. She's flying? Zoro asked. Kyahahaha. Nope. I ate the kilo fruit. I can change my weight from 1 to 10,000 kilograms in an instant, she bragged. Princess, Igaram whispered to Vivi from where he lay. Please, you must run. If you die, the kingdom is lost. She. The booger guy wasn't very strong, Luffy pouted, dropping Mr. Five like a sack of potatoes. Hey, wait lady, are you gonna fight too? It's Miss Valentine, you rubber brat, she shrieked, floating above them. 10,000 kilo press. As she plummeted down, Luffy tilted his head curiously. Oh, you can get heavy? That's neat. He grinned widely. But I'm still gonna kick your butt. Kyahaha, wait. What's that smell? Miss Valentine suddenly sniffed the air. Oh yeah. Sanji's probably cooking breakfast. Luffy's eyes turned to stars, completely forgetting about the fight. Food. Don't get distracted, Zoro yelled. But Zoro, I'm hungry. Luffy whined, stretching his arm to grab a piece of rubble to eat, mistaking it for food. That's not food, Vivi shouted in disbelief. Leg. Luffy spat out the rocks. Oh right, fighting. He turned back to Miss Valentine with renewed focus. Let's finish this quick so I can eat. Don't mock me. She dove down again. Gomu Gomu no. Luffy wound up his arm, still grinning. Pistol. The punch sent Miss Valentine spinning into the same building as her partner. She. Now, where's the meat? Luffy looked around excitedly before noticing Vivi. Oh yeah, hey princess lady, wanna join my crew? This isn't the time for that, everyone shouted. That's something you don't see every day, said a voice. Everyone turned to see Nami sitting up on the roof of a building. But why not? Luffy whined, picking his nose casually while standing atop the rubble. She seems interesting, and she's a mystery princess. Luffy-san, Vivi started, still stunned by how easily he defeated the officer agents. I can't. My kingdom is in danger and… Oh, then we'll help you save it, Luffy declared with his characteristic simplicity, the offering to help save a nation rowing sugar. Don't decide things like that, Zoro growled, though there was a resigned acceptance in his voice. But Zoro, there might be strong guys to fight, Luffy grinned, and adventures, and new food to try. Suddenly, Nami emerged from the shadows, berry signs in her eyes. Did someone say kingdom? That means treasure, right? Nami, Luffy waved. We're gonna help the mystery princess save her kingdom. For a suitable fee, of course, Nami added smoothly, turning to Vivi. Let's discuss payment. That's what you're worried about, Igaram shouted. She. Nami's scary when it comes to money. Luffy laughed, then perked up. Oh, is that Sanji cooking? Focus, you idiot, Zoro bonked him on the head, his fist passing through the rubber. But Zoro, your highness, Igaram struggled to his feet. These pirates, are they really? Don't worry about them. Vivi found herself smiling despite everything. They're different. Different is one word for it, Mr. Nine muttered, still trying to process how the goofy rubber boy had casually demolished 2 officer agents. After restraining Miss Valentine's Day, everyone left the battleground to sit and talk to Vivi. So you're a princess? Mr. Nine asked. Yes. I'm Vivi Nerfatari, princess of the kingdom of Alabasta. Vivi said, now looking like how Luffy remembered her, without a stuck-up look and her bangs in front of her forehead. So what's a princess doing working for an underground organization? Zoro asked, bored with the life of royalty. It's not that, she said with a sad tone. She then told them about how her country was in a civil war, which was slowly leading the country into self-destruction, and how she decided to do something about which led to her and her companion Igaram infiltrating Baroque works to find out who was pulling the strings behind for the past 2 years. You're pretty tough for a princess, Zoro said. So, what is it that they're planning? At first, it was an ideal nation, Igaram said as they looked at him. But that was a lie, Vivi said. Its real goal is to take over Alabasta. If I don't return home and warn my people, it'll be too late. That's the real reason? Nami said. Yes, Vivi replied. Guess you wouldn't have much money with your country as it is, Nami said. So who's behind the whole thing? Luffy asked with a knowing smile. The boss? Vivi shrieked. Don't ask, so you do know, huh? Zoro said. Yes, but you shouldn't ask, Vivi shouted. Then we'll drop it, Nami said laughing nervously. If this guy's trying to take over a whole country, then I'd rather not get on his bad side. No one would, Vivi said. No matter how strong you all are, you'd be no match for one of the 7 warlords. Not against Crocodile. Everyone stared at her for a few moments as they let it sink in. Luffy wanted to laugh at Vivi's slip of the tongue. Crocodile, Luffy said, causing Vivi and Nami to turn white as she covered her mouth. Wow, you've got a big mouth, Zoro said before everyone noticed an otter and a vulture looking down at them before flying away. Nami went ballistic and began shaking Vivi by her jacket and yelling at her while Vivi kept saying she was sorry. A warlord? Miss Monday and Mr. Nine said in utter horror. Nami kept going apeshit on Vivi before covering her eyes and crying. This can't be happening, she said. What do you know? A warlord, huh? Zoro said with a grin. Sounds like fun, Luffy said. I'm out. Nami turned on her heel. It was fun while it lasted. Running already? Zoro smirked. Her escape plan died as the otter returned, displaying perfect sketches of their faces. Nami crumpled to the ground with a wail. We're doomed. I've got around 500,000 in my savings if you'd like, Vivi told her, trying to make her feel better. This is nuts. Mr. Nine shouted. What do we do now? Baroque Works has over 2,000 people in it, we can't fight them. Calm down, Igaram said as he stood up. I've got an idea. Princess Vivi, Igaram said, now dressed in an exact copy of Vivi's clothes, complete with a wig. I will act as your decoy. Peeved. Luffy tried to hold back his laughter at the ridiculous sight. That's your plan? Nami shrieked. Ma, Igaram coughed, attempting to mimic Vivi's voice. I will take these dummies with me and sail in the opposite direction to draw their attention. Those dummies look nothing like us, Zoro deadpanned, staring at the crude straw figures. Igaram. Vivi's eyes filled with concern. Please, princess. Take the eastern route to Alabasta. With these pirates' help, you should be safe. He turned to Luffy. I beg you, please protect the princess. She. Of course, Luffy grinned. We already decided to help. You decided, Nami protested, but everyone could tell she'd already given up arguing. The reward will be 1 billion berry, Igaram added. We'll protect her with our lives. Nami declared berry signs in her eyes. As Igaram prepared to leave, Vivi enveloped him in a desperate hug, her voice trembling. Please be careful. I will, princess, he assured her with a determined nod, then boarded his small ship and set sail into the ominous night. They watched as the darkness swallowed him whole, tension gripping their hearts. Suddenly, a deafening explosion shattered the silence, illuminating the sky where Igaram had just been. Igaram! Vivi's anguished scream pierced the air, raw with fear. Luffy turned serious, an intense look in his eyes as he placed his signature hat on Vivi's head. Don't worry, he is alive. We'll get you home safely. Zoro's expression darkened, urgency lacing his voice. We need to move, they're already here. Nami seized Vivi's shaking hand, pulling her forward. Come on. We have to get to the ship. When Vivi stood frozen in shock, her lip bleeding from her bite, Nami quickly wrapped her arms around her in a comforting hug. I know it hurts, but we have to go now. I'll get the others, Luffy shouted, stretching his rubbery arms towards the building where Sanji and Usopp were still snoozing. With a swift snap, he yanked his drowsy crewmates into the chaos of the night. What's happening? Usopp stammered, barely awake and bewildered. No time. Nami barked as they sprinted through the shadowy streets. Baroque Works is after us. Luffy led the charge, bouncing ahead with reckless enthusiasm. This way. I smell adventure. You mean you smell food? Zoro quipped, but even he had to admire how their captain's seemingly random route expertly dodged any sign of danger. As they rounded a corner, the Going Merry came into sight, its silhouette emerging through the thickening fog. A sigh of relief swept over the crew, until they spotted a figure lounging casually on the ship's railing. My, leaving so soon? Miss All Sunday's enigmatic smile sent chills down their spines.